I still think about that winter even now. Not a day goes by, really, where my mind doesn't wander back to the chilling quiet of those woods and that door. It happened when I was 26, fresh out of a relationship that had left me feeling raw and restless. My name's Alex, and at the time I was living in a small cabin my grandfather built, nestled deep in the northern Michigan woods. It was a place I'd always retreated to when life got loud, a place where the only sounds were the wind in the pines and the crackle of the fireplace. I worked remotely, thankfully, which meant I could spend my winters holed up enjoying the solitude, or so I thought. That particular year, the snow came early and stayed late. Deep, unforgiving drifts covered everything, turning the familiar landscape into a stark, silent world of white and gray. My routine was pretty simple: work during the day, then strap on my snowshoes and head out for a long hike before dusk. I loved the bite of the cold air, the way the snow crunched underfoot, the feeling of being completely alone. It was meditative, a way to clear my head and escape the ghosts of my past. Looking back, I know I was incredibly naive, almost arrogant in my comfort with isolation. I'd grown up exploring those woods. I knew every trail, every creek bed, every old-growth stand, or so I believed. I carried a small survival kit, a fully charged phone, and always told my sister, Sarah, roughly where I was headed, but deep down, I never truly believed I'd need any of it. My biggest vulnerability wasn't physical unpreparedness. It was a profound underestimation of the unknown. I trusted the woods implicitly, trusted them to be just woods, predictable and wild. One Tuesday in late January, the temperature dropped significantly, plunging to near zero. The air was so dry and still, it felt brittle. It was the kind of cold that stole sound, leaving behind an unnatural silence. I'd finished my work early, around 2 in the afternoon, and decided to push a bit further than usual on my hike. There was an old deer trail I hadn't explored since my teens, one that led deeper into a less trafficked section of the state forest, away from even the faintest signs of other human activity. I figured the frigid temperatures would keep anyone else away, ensuring absolute solitude. A perfect day for it, I thought, pulling on my thickest wool layers and adjusting my backpack. The sun, a pale, anemic disk in the winter sky, was already beginning its slow descent when I turned onto the less trodden path. The familiar crunch of snow was muffled by the sheer density of the drifts. Pine needles, frosted white, seemed to absorb the weak light. As I moved deeper, the silence became oppressive, a heavy blanket that pressed in on my ears. It wasn't just the lack of human noise, it was the absence of any sound. No wind, no squirrels chattering. Not even the distant caw of a crow. It was then, as I rounded a cluster of frost-covered birches, that I saw it. Standing upright in the middle of a small clearing, completely out of place, was a wooden door. It was an old door made of dark, heavy wood, weathered and scarred like something from an ancient farmhouse. It had no frame, no walls attached to it, just the door standing freely in the snow, a thick, ornate brass knob glinting dully against the dark wood. It looked impossibly solid, utterly out of context, like a forgotten portal dropped by some giant. A shiver, completely unrelated to the cold, snaked down my spine. The air around it felt different. Thicker, somehow, as if the silence had a weight that settled heavier there. My breath hitched, a faint puff of white in the cold air. The first uneasy whisper of dread began to stir within me. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the profound silence. The cold air, which had moments before felt invigorating, now seemed to claw at my skin, raising gooseflesh despite my layers. The door. It stood there, an impossible sentinel, its dark wood absorbing the weak light of the fading afternoon. It wasn't a trick of the light, wasn't a fallen tree stump carved into some bizarre resemblance. It was undeniably a door. My mind, usually so quick to rationalize and categorize, struggled to process the image. A door implies a house, a wall, an entrance to an enclosed space. But this one stood in the open, defiant of all logic, anchored by nothing visible to the snow-covered ground. It was tall, perhaps 7 feet, and wide, sturdy enough to withstand centuries. The wood was so dark it looked almost black, deep grain visible beneath layers of what I now recognized as an ancient, peeling varnish. The ornate brass knob, verdigris clinging to its crevices, was a stark contrast, an improbable glint in the gathering gloom. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at my throat. My first instinct was to back away, to turn and flee, to pretend I hadn't seen it. The woods I knew, the predictable wild, had just thrown me a curveball that shattered my sense of security. This wasn't just a strange find, it was an anomaly, a breach in the natural order I had always trusted. But then a stubborn ember of curiosity, a trait that had both got me into and out of trouble my entire life, began to glow. I took a tentative step forward, then another. The snow crunched beneath my boots, a loud intrusion into the oppressive silence. My eyes remained fixed on the door, scanning for any sign of artifice, any string, any support, any explanation. There was none. It simply was. The air around it did feel different, just as I'd initially perceived, colder, perhaps, but also somehow heavier. As if all sound, all movement, all life was being gently drawn into its inexplicable presence. My hand, encased in a thick wool glove, trembled as I reached out, hesitant. I stopped inches from the dark wood. It looked ancient, yes, but also utterly solid, immutable. I could see faint carvings etched into its surface, spiraling patterns that seemed to writhe and intertwine, almost like stylized roots or ancient runes, though I couldn't make them out clearly in the dimming light. My fingers, still gloved, finally made contact. The wood felt shockingly cold, colder than the frigid air, as if it had absorbed the very essence of the winter night. But it wasn't just cold. There was a faint, almost imperceptible vibration, a hum that seemed to resonate deep within my bones rather than being felt by my fingertips. It was like touching a dormant power source, barely contained. I snatched my hand back, startled. "Hello," my voice was a weak, reedy sound, swallowed instantly by the vast quiet. It felt absurd, speaking to a door, but I couldn't help it. My mind raced, trying to invent scenarios, a forgotten movie prop, an art installation. But who would haul such a massive, heavy thing so deep into the remote woods, only to leave it standing free in the snow, and with such a profound sense of isolation surrounding it? No, this was different. This was wrong. My eyes fell on the brass knob. It was exquisitely detailed, intricate engravings covering its surface, too fine for a simple utilitarian purpose. It gleamed invitingly, almost beckoning. Despite the unease swirling within me, I felt an undeniable pull, an urge to know what lay beyond it. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff, both terrified and fascinated by the abyss below. I slowly extended my hand again, my gaze fixed on the knob. This time I was more deliberate. My gloved fingers closed around the cold metal. It was heavy, substantial, and the engravings bit faintly into the wool of my glove. I twisted. It turned smoothly, silently. My breath hitched again. It wasn't stuck. It wasn't frozen. It rotated with an effortless grace that belied its apparent age and the sub-zero temperatures. A soft click echoed in the vast silence, not a loud mechanical sound, but a subtle release like a key turning in a well-oiled lock. My heart pounded even harder. What had I done? Every instinct screamed at me to let go, to run, to leave this impossible thing behind. But another, more primal part of me, the part that had always sought adventure and pushed boundaries, refused to yield. I could feel a faint pressure from the door, a subtle give as if it were now unlatched, waiting for me to push or pull. I hesitated, my hand still on the knob. The sun had dipped lower, casting long, eerie shadows across the clearing. The pale light that remained seemed to drain the color from the snow, leaving everything in shades of stark white and deepening gray. The air grew colder, the profound silence more absolute. This wasn't just a physical chill, it was a chill of the soul. I thought of Sarah, my sister. I told her I was going a bit deeper than usual toward the old logging road, a vague direction that wouldn't help her find me here. I always prided myself on my preparedness, but nothing in my survival kit, nothing in my years of woodcraft had prepared me for a freestanding door to nowhere. My thumb, still on the knob, instinctively pressed into the wood around it. There was no visible keyhole, no hinges, just the solid panel. I could feel the faint current of cold air, or was it just my imagination, seeping from the hairline crack where the door met nothing? The pressure on the knob was light, almost imperceptible. I could feel the promise of an opening, a slight movement in the wood beneath my touch. With a surge of adrenaline, I decided I had to know. I couldn't walk away from this, not now that it had responded to my touch. It felt like a direct challenge, an invitation. Slowly, with a deep breath that fogged the air before me, I pulled. The door didn't swing open. Instead, it moved inward, away from me with a soft, almost soundless sigh. It glided on unseen hinges, opening just a few inches, revealing absolute darkness. Not the deep gray gloom of the approaching winter night, but a true, impenetrable blackness. It was a void that seemed to swallow all light, a tangible absence that felt colder, denser than anything I had ever encountered. No faint glimmer of moonlight, no reflected snow light, nothing. Just a blackness so profound it seemed to pull at my gaze, threatening to draw me in. And from within that abyssal opening, a faint scent drifted out. It wasn't the clean, piney scent of the forest, nor the sharp tang of frost. It was something else entirely. Earthy, damp, like old stone and forgotten soil. But beneath that, a sharper, more metallic tang, faint but unmistakable, like ozone or old blood. A shiver, violent and uncontrollable, racked my body. Every fiber of my being screamed danger. This wasn't a cabin, wasn't a cave, wasn't anything natural. This was a portal to something unknown, something fundamentally alien to my world. My hand remained frozen on the cold brass knob, my body half turned towards the ominous crack. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the impossibility of it all. A door standing in the middle of nowhere, opening into a void that smelled of damp earth and iron. The quiet had returned, but now it was laced with a new quality, an expectant hush. It felt like the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do. The pale sun had finally vanished below the horizon, plunging the clearing into a twilight that made the open door an even more unsettling presence. I knew I should close it. I should turn and run, not look back, pretend it never happened. But the darkness within held an irresistible allure. It promised answers, secrets, wonders that defied all reason. The same reckless curiosity that had brought me this far now urged me to take the next, more dangerous step. I pulled the door open a little further, just enough to glimpse a sliver of whatever lay beyond the initial blackness. My eyes strained, trying to penetrate the absolute dark. There was no sound, not even the whisper of wind, just that unnerving, profound stillness and the strange, metallic tang in the air. As my eyes adjusted, or perhaps as the darkness itself subtly shifted, I started to perceive outlines. Not a vast, empty cavern, but something narrower, more defined. It looked like a passageway, a tunnel of some kind. The edges of the opening, where the absolute black met a slightly less absolute black, suggested stone or some kind of rough-hewn material. No artificial light, no glow, nothing man-made in a modern sense. My heart continued its frantic rhythm, but a new sensation was beginning to override the fear, a surge of exhilarating dread. This was real. This was happening. I was standing before a gateway to something utterly inexplicable, something that had no business existing in the quiet Michigan woods. I released the doorknob, letting the door hang open a few inches. My mind was a whirl. I reached for my phone but hesitated. Who would I call? "Hey Sarah, I found a magic door in the woods that leads to an abyss. What do you think?" She'd think I'd gone mad from isolation. My GPS signal was probably spotty this deep in, and even if it worked, what good would it do? There was no map for this. I took a tentative step towards the opening, peering into the inky blackness. The cold emanating from within was different from the outside air. It was a deeper, more profound chill, one that seemed to sink into the marrow of my bones. I leaned closer, trying to discern more details. The earthy, damp smell was stronger now, and the metallic tang, too. It made the back of my throat itch. My hand instinctively went to my backpack. I had a flashlight, a good one. Perhaps a light would reveal more, strip away some of the oppressive mystery. But then another thought struck me. What if the light simply vanished into that void? What if it agitated whatever lay within? The idea of shining a beam into that ancient, unyielding darkness felt like a profound act of disrespect, an intrusion into something that should remain undisturbed. Still, the lure was too strong. My logical mind, which had spent years studying remote sensing data and scientific reports, was screaming for data, for answers. This was a phenomenon, a riddle waiting to be solved, and I was the only one here. I pulled my heavy-duty headlamp from my pack, clicking it on. The bright beam cut a stark swath through the twilight, illuminating the snow, the trees, and then, hesitantly, I aimed it towards the opening. The light seemed to recoil. It didn't reflect, didn't illuminate in the way light normally would. Instead, it seemed to be absorbed. The powerful beam from my headlamp, capable of cutting through the darkest night, barely penetrated a few feet into the blackness beyond the door. It was like shining a flashlight into a black hole. The edges of the beam, where it met the void, looked distorted, almost bent. But it wasn't total absorption. Within that limited range, I could see. It was a tunnel, narrow, barely wide enough for me to pass through without brushing both shoulders. The walls were rough-hewn stone, dark and irregular, slick with moisture. The ceiling was low, forcing me to duck my head slightly even to peer in. The ground appeared to be uneven earth, damp and packed, descending gently downwards. There were no carvings on the visible stone, no signs of anything but raw, ancient excavation. It looked like a very old, forgotten mine shaft, or perhaps a natural cave entrance that had been artificially widened. But where did it lead? And how had it come to be here, behind a freestanding door in the middle of a forest? The profound silence from within was broken only by the faint drip of water, a sound so subtle it was almost imagined, adding to the claustrophobic atmosphere. The air within was heavy, stagnant, and intensely cold. That metallic scent was even stronger, making my nose wrinkle. My heart thumped with a mixture of terror and fierce determination. I was on the brink of something monumental. This wasn't just a hike anymore. This was a threshold. I stood there transfixed, my headlamp beam a futile probe against the overwhelming darkness. The tunnel beckoned, a silent, gaping maw. My rational mind screamed at me to turn back, to ignore this impossible aberration and return to the predictable comfort of my cabin. The woods were turning colder, the daylight fading fast. I was alone, miles from any road, any human being. But the sheer improbability of it all held me captive. This was a secret, an untold story waiting to be discovered. The thought of walking away, of leaving this mystery unsolved, felt like a betrayal of my own curious nature. I took a deep breath, the cold air burning my lungs. I reached into my backpack, not for a weapon, but for my water bottle and a granola bar. If I was going in, I needed to be ready. This was no longer a short detour. This was an expedition. I glanced back at the familiar world, the snow-laden pines, the fading sky. It seemed impossibly distant, dreamlike. Then I turned back to the door, to the dark passage it guarded. "Okay, Alex," I whispered to myself, my voice shaky. "Let's see what you've found." With a final, conscious push of courage, I stepped forward. My boot crunched on the snowy threshold for the last time before crossing into the opening. The transition was immediate and jarring. The world behind me, with its cold, silent woods, vanished as if snuffed out. The door, which had been open, now felt like it sealed itself shut with an almost imperceptible pressure behind me, though I hadn't touched it. The faint natural light from the clearing was gone utterly. I was plunged into the profound, unyielding darkness of the tunnel, illuminated only by the weak, struggling beam of my headlamp. The air here was suffocatingly heavy, damp and frigid, carrying that pungent, earthy smell mixed with the sharp, metallic tang. It was a smell that felt ancient, a scent of minerals and something else, something vaguely organic and decaying. The quiet was absolute, a heavy, dead silence that pressed in on my ears, far more intense than the silence of the winter woods. I could hear my own breathing, ragged and loud, and the frantic thumping of my heart. The tunnel, as I'd seen from the outside, was narrow. My shoulders brushed against the rough, cold stone walls as I moved. The ground was uneven, a mix of packed earth and loose pebbles, making each step treacherous. I moved slowly, cautiously, my headlamp beam cutting a small, wavering circle of light in the oppressive dark. The light seemed to struggle, losing its intensity rapidly, as if the darkness itself was actively absorbing it, dampening its power. My eyes scanned the immediate surroundings, trying to gather any information. The stone walls were just that, raw, unworked stone, damp and glistening in places with what looked like mineral deposits or perpetually seeping water. There was no sign of human construction beyond the initial excavation. No carvings, no tools, nothing to suggest who might have made this place or why. It was profoundly unsettling. It felt like walking into the very bowels of the earth, into a place that time had forgotten. The tunnel continued to slope gently downwards, deeper and deeper into the unknown. I focused on putting one foot in front of the other, trying to control the rising panic. What was I doing? This was insane. But the sheer novelty, the profound mystery of it, kept me moving forward. Each step was a step further from the rational world, deeper into a realm of pure enigma. I kept checking behind me, but the door was gone. Not literally gone, I assumed, but utterly swallowed by the darkness. It was as if the entrance had folded in on itself, leaving no trace of the exterior world. The thought sent a fresh wave of terror through me. Had I trapped myself? "Hello?" I tried again, my voice sounding strained and small in the overwhelming quiet. No echo, just my own words swallowed by the thick air. The metallic tang was stronger now, a coppery taste at the back of my tongue. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 or 15 minutes, the tunnel began to widen slightly. The ceiling remained low, but the walls receded a few feet, creating a slightly more expansive, though still claustrophobic, space. Here, the air was even heavier, and the dripping sound of water was more distinct, echoing faintly from unseen recesses. My headlamp beam, still fighting against the pervasive dark, finally caught something new. On the damp stone wall to my left, I saw something, not a carving, but a marking. A single, crude symbol etched deep into the rock. It looked like a stylized eye, elongated and narrow, with a vertical slit pupil. It was disturbing, primal, unlike any symbol I'd ever seen. It felt ancient, speaking of a time long before any known human civilization. A fresh wave of unease washed over me. This wasn't just a natural formation. Someone or something had been here. I paused, shining my light over the symbol, trying to decipher its meaning. It radiated an unsettling energy, a silent warning. My breath hitched. Was it a sign of welcome, a territorial mark, or a dire warning? As I stared at the symbol, I became aware of a new sensation. It wasn't a sound, not precisely, but a subtle pressure. A deep, low hum almost below the threshold of hearing that seemed to vibrate through the very stone of the tunnel. It resonated in my chest, a faint, unsettling tremor. It felt like the beating of a distant, colossal heart. I slowly moved my headlamp beam away from the symbol, scanning the tunnel ahead. The low hum grew almost imperceptibly, a constant, underlying thrum. The air, already thick, seemed to thicken further, becoming harder to breathe. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber. My headlamp beam struggled to pierce the gloom of this new space. It was immense, far larger than I had anticipated, like a massive underground cathedral. The ceiling was lost in the absolute darkness above, and the walls stretched out, barely visible at the extreme edges of my light. The air here was even colder, the metallic tang sharper, and the pervasive hum was now distinct, a deep, resonant vibration that filled the entire chamber. My light swept across the uneven ground. It wasn't packed earth here, but something else. Irregular, rough formations jutted from the floor like stalagmites, but too angular, too deliberate. And everywhere on these formations, on the walls, on the ground, I saw more symbols, thousands of them. The same stylized eye repeated over and over, sometimes alone, sometimes interwoven with other strange geometric patterns. They pulsed with an eerie, silent significance. As my beam moved, it finally illuminated the centerpiece of the chamber. In the very middle of the vast space, rising from the rough floor like a dark, jagged mountain, was an enormous structure. It was made of the same dark stone as the tunnel walls, but it was clearly carved, shaped, monumental. It seemed to defy the natural geology of the cave, too symmetrical, too purposeful. It was a massive monolith, tapering slightly towards a peak that disappeared into the unseen ceiling. And upon its surface, too, were etched the myriad symbols, glowing faintly with an inner, almost phosphorescent light that was barely visible through the oppressive darkness and the struggling beam of my headlamp. The hum was emanating from this structure. It pulsed with a low, powerful vibration that resonated through the entire chamber, through the very ground beneath my feet and deep into my chest. It wasn't a mechanical sound, but something organic, ancient, vast. My flashlight beam, now seemingly even weaker, flickered. My heart leaped into my throat. No, not now. I slapped the side of the headlamp and the light steadied, but the incident served as a stark reminder of my precarious situation. I was deep underground, alone with a failing light source in a place that defied all known reality. My eyes, wide with a mixture of terror and awe, scanned the colossal monolith. It was a temple, a monument, a power source. It was unlike anything I had ever seen or imagined. The symbols on its surface seemed to shift and dance in the weak light, an optical illusion caused by the flickering beam and my overstimulated mind, but it felt real. It felt like they were watching me. The metallic tang in the air here was overwhelming. It was more than just iron now. It had a strange, sweet undertone like decay and something else entirely. Something alien. My gaze fell to the base of the monolith. There, clustered around its immense foundation, were more shapes. At first, I couldn't make them out in the darkness, but as I crept a few steps closer, my headlamp beam struggling to illuminate them, a cold wave of horror washed over me. They were bodies. Not human bodies, not exactly. They were elongated, twisted forms, desiccated and skeletal, covered in what looked like leathery, dark skin. They were curled almost reverently around the base of the monolith, their strange, angular limbs splayed in unnatural positions. Their heads were elongated, with empty, sunken eye sockets that seemed to echo the stylized eye symbol etched into the walls. Their jaws were agape, as if screaming in silent agony or awe. My blood ran cold. These were not recent deaths. These creatures, whatever they were, had been here for a very long time. They looked ancient, mummified by the strange conditions of this underground chamber, and the sheer number of them, dozens, perhaps hundreds, forming a grotesque, silent congregation around the pulsing heart of the monolith. The metallic tang now made chilling sense. Blood, ancient, dried blood, perhaps, or the lingering scent of whatever fluid had once coursed through these impossible beings. I wanted to scream, to run, to claw my way back to the impossible door and the safe, familiar terror of the winter woods. But I was frozen, paralyzed by the horrific spectacle. My mind struggled to comprehend. What were these things? Where did they come from? And what had drawn them here, to this impossible, pulsing monolith in this forgotten chamber deep beneath the Michigan wilderness? The hum from the monolith intensified, a low thrum that vibrated through my teeth and bones. It felt like a conscious presence, a vast, ancient power awakening. The air grew even heavier, almost viscous, and the symbols on the monolith seemed to glow a little brighter, a faint, sickly green light flickering at their edges. My headlamp beam, fighting against the overwhelming darkness and whatever strange energy permeated this chamber, flickered again. This time it didn't just steady. It dimmed significantly, the powerful beam reduced to a weak, sickly yellow glow, barely illuminating the ground directly in front of me. The surrounding darkness seemed to surge forward, pressing in, eager to reclaim the small circle of light. A new sound began to emerge from the hum, faint at first, then growing louder. A rhythmic, almost mechanical thump-thump, like a giant, slow heartbeat, echoing through the vast chamber. It mingled with the hum, creating a dizzying, hypnotic rhythm that resonated deep within my chest. My breath caught in my throat. I was no longer alone. The chamber wasn't merely a graveyard, it was a prelude. The thought of turning back was now more terrifying than moving forward. The way back through the narrow tunnel into that absolute darkness without a reliable light source was unthinkable. I had to find a way out, or at least understand what I had stumbled into. I clutched the almost useless headlamp, its dim light casting grotesque, dancing shadows among the desiccated figures. The air was thick with the strange, sweet metallic odor, and the throbbing hum of the monolith filled my ears, pushing all other thoughts aside. My gaze, straining in the dim light, finally settled on something else, something I hadn't noticed before, overshadowed by the horrifying array of bodies and the immense monolith. On the far side of the chamber, opposite the entrance I'd come through, another opening. It was smaller, less imposing than the entrance, almost a crack in the rock face, barely visible in the pervasive gloom. Could it be another exit, a way out of this impossible place, or merely a deeper descent into whatever horrors this underground labyrinth held? The question hung heavy in the stifling air. The rhythmic thump-thump from the monolith grew louder, more insistent, vibrating through the ground. It was no longer just a sound, it was a physical force, a pulse that seemed to demand attention. The symbols on the monolith now glowed with a definite, albeit faint, sickly green light, and they were no longer static. They seemed to ripple, to flow, like liquid energy beneath the surface of the stone. My legs felt like lead, but I forced myself to move. Slowly, cautiously, I began to circle the edges of the vast chamber, keeping a wide berth from the monolith and its grotesque congregation. Each step felt like walking on sacred, forbidden ground. The light from my headlamp, now barely more than a glowworm, made the shadows around me dance and writhe, creating phantom shapes that sent shivers down my spine. As I moved, I noticed more details about the desiccated figures. They weren't just mummified, some were intertwined, almost fused with the stone of the monolith itself, as if they had been absorbed or had grown from it. Their forms were alien, not bipedal in a human sense, with too many joints, too many limbs that ended in sharp, claw-like digits. Their heads were disproportionately large, with those empty, elongated eye sockets. They were horrific, ancient, and utterly captivating in their strangeness. The stench of decay and metal was overpowering now, burning my nostrils. I coughed, the sound harsh and loud in the throbbing silence. My eyes remained fixed on the small opening on the far side of the chamber. It was my only hope. I had to reach it. The journey across the chamber felt interminable. The ground was treacherous, littered with debris and small, sharp stones. The air grew colder, the pressure from the monoliths hummed more intense, making my head ache and my ears ring. The green light from the symbols on the monolith flickered and intensified with each thump-thump of its unseen pulse. Finally, after what felt like an hour, I reached the other side of the chamber. The opening was indeed a crack, a narrow fissure in the rock face, far smaller than the door I'd entered through. It looked barely wide enough to squeeze through. I hesitated, shining my almost dead headlamp into the crack. The darkness within was absolute, even more so than the previous tunnel. No faint outlines, no stone walls, nothing visible, just a black, impenetrable void. The cold emanating from it was piercing, a bone-deep chill that made my teeth chatter. The hum from the monolith pulsed behind me, and the thump-thump grew louder, more urgent. It felt like the entire chamber was alive, vibrating with an ancient, malevolent energy. I could feel the pull of that energy, a dizzying magnetic force. I had to choose. Stay in this terrifying chamber with the pulsing monolith and its silent, skeletal congregation, or plunge into an even deeper, darker unknown. The decision was agonizing, but the thought of remaining in that chamber, waiting for whatever awakening was taking place, was unbearable. With a desperate resolve, I turned my back on the monolith, on the glowing symbols and the grotesque bodies. I took one last, gasping breath of the metallic, fetid air, and then, with a surge of adrenaline, I squeezed myself into the narrow crack. It was a tight fit. The rough stone scraped against my jacket, and I had to turn sideways, shrugging off my backpack to push it ahead of me. The darkness was absolute, suffocating. I couldn't even see the weak glow of my own headlamp. It was so effectively swallowed. I moved forward blindly, feeling my way with my hands, the cold, damp stone pressing in on all sides. The crack opened into another tunnel, slightly wider than the fissure, but still narrow. The floor was rough, descending steeply. My feet slipped on loose scree and I almost fell, catching myself just in time. The air here was even colder, and the silence was different again. It wasn't the heavy, watchful silence of the monolith chamber. It was a dead, empty silence, devoid of any hum, any sound, any life. My headlamp, barely a whisper of light now, finally died. The tiny, fragile flame of illumination that had been my only comfort in this terrifying abyss winked out, plunging me into absolute, total darkness. Panic seized me, sharp and visceral. I was blind, utterly, completely blind. The cold, the dark, the silence, they pressed in on me, suffocating, overwhelming. I stumbled, my hands flailing against the rough walls, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. "No," I cried out, the sound swallowed by the oppressive void. "No, no, no." I was lost deep beneath the earth in a place that defied all reason, with no light, no sense of direction, no hope. The fear was a living thing, coiling in my gut, making me shake uncontrollably. My mind raced, trying to find a solution, but there was none. I was utterly, hopelessly trapped. I slid down the rough slope, my feet scrabbling for purchase. The descent seemed to go on, deeper and deeper into the crushing darkness. I was falling, but slowly, uncontrollably, into an abyss of unknown depth. Then a sound. Faint, barely perceptible at first, but distinct. A whisper, not wind, not water, a voice. It was ancient, multitonal, impossibly deep and impossibly high at the same time. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, resonating within my very skull. It wasn't speaking any language I knew, but it carried an undeniable meaning, a lament. A profound, aching sorrow laced with something else, something cold and utterly indifferent. The whispers grew, converging, swirling around me in the darkness, a chorus of alien voices. They seemed to be speaking to me, though I couldn't understand the words. They filled the void, pressing against my mind, threatening to shatter my sanity. The sound was unbearable, a symphony of ancient grief and cosmic indifference. I covered my ears, but it was no use. The sound was inside me, echoing in the hollows of my bones. I squeezed my eyes shut, but there was nothing to see anyway, just the crushing black. The whispers intensified, becoming a mournful wail, a rising crescendo of alien voices. And within that cacophony I felt it, a presence, something vast, immense, awakening in the profound darkness below me, stirring from an unimaginable slumber. The air grew heavy again, but this time it wasn't just cold, it was electrified, prickling my skin. The ground beneath me shifted, not just loose scree, but something more fundamental, a deep, resonant rumble that shook the very foundations of the earth. I was falling, stumbling, blind and deafened by the alien lament, into the maw of something truly ancient and terrible. The impossible door, the pulsating monolith, the desiccated bodies, they were all just fragments of a larger, more terrifying truth. And I, Alex, the naive hiker seeking solitude, had just plunged headfirst into its heart. The whispers reached a fever pitch, dissolving into a single agonizing scream that tore through the darkness. And then silence. Absolute profound silence. The rumble beneath me ceased. The electrified air went still. The overwhelming presence that had been awakening seemed to recede, leaving me suspended in a breathless void. My heart, which had been pounding like a trapped bird, now seemed to slow, almost stopping in the face of this new, terrifying stillness. I was no longer falling. My feet had found purchase on something solid, something smooth and cold. My hands, still outstretched in the darkness, felt a vast, flat surface, slick with an unidentifiable moisture. I opened my eyes, though it made no difference. The darkness was absolute, impenetrable. But the silence, the sheer heavy weight of this new silence was more terrifying than any sound. It felt like the end of all things. Then a single, tiny point of light appeared in the distance. Not a reflection, not a glow, but a faint pinprick of pure light hovering in the overwhelming blackness ahead of me. It was so impossibly far away, so tiny, that it seemed to mock my desperate hope. But it was light, and in that terrifying, endless dark, it was everything. I pushed myself forward, one foot in front of the other, moving blindly towards the distant, impossible beacon. The surface beneath my feet was smooth, cold, and slightly inclined upwards. Each step was an act of faith, a desperate gamble against the crushing reality of my situation. The air remained still, thick, and profoundly cold, carrying that lingering, metallic scent. As I moved slowly, cautiously, my hands brushing against unseen walls, the pinprick of light grew infinitesimally. It was still impossibly distant, but it was no longer just a dot. It was a faint, hazy glow, a promise of something beyond the absolute void. My mind, still reeling from the alien lament and the terrifying presence, clung to that light with fierce determination. The only thing that mattered was that faint, impossible glow. It was a lifeline in an ocean of crushing dark. My legs ached, my lungs burned with the frigid, heavy air, but I pushed on, one shuffling, uncertain step after another. The surface beneath my feet was indeed smooth, like polished obsidian, but vast and cold, stretching out into the inky blackness. My hands, sliding along the unseen walls, met the same slick, unyielding material. It felt like I was walking through the throat of some colossal, petrified creature, its skin smooth and cold. The incline was gradual, almost imperceptible at first, but with each laborious step, I felt myself slowly ascending. There was no sound save for my own ragged breathing and the frantic thrumming of my heart. The silence here was different from the previous chamber, devoid of the monolith's oppressive hum or the alien lament. It was an empty, echoing silence, a void pregnant with unseen possibilities. The metallic scent, that strange mix of earth and something unidentifiable, lingered, a constant companion in the profound darkness. It felt like an ancient perfume, clinging to the air, to the smooth stone, to my very clothes. Time had lost all meaning. Minutes bled into hours, or perhaps only moments, as I blindly shuffled forward. Each step was a battle against my own exhaustion, against the gnawing fear that the light would vanish, that this entire experience was a hallucination born of a freezing, oxygen-deprived mind. But the light persisted. Slowly, so slowly, it grew from a pinprick to a faint glimmer, then a hazy orb. It wasn't a focused beam like a flashlight, but a diffuse, ethereal glow, as if the very air ahead was imbued with a subtle luminescence. As I drew closer, the cold intensified, a deep, pervasive chill that seemed to emanate from the light source itself. My teeth began to chatter uncontrollably, and my fingers, numb despite my thick gloves, felt clumsy and unresponsive. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the passageway opened up. I stumbled out of the narrow confines, my eyes blinking rapidly against the sudden, albeit weak, illumination. I had emerged into an enormous cavern, far larger than the monolith chamber, its vastness almost incomprehensible. The source of the light was directly ahead, an immense, crystalline formation soaring upwards towards an impossibly high ceiling, its facets catching and diffusing a faint, internal luminescence. The crystal was colossal, easily 100 feet tall, shimmering with a soft, milky white light that cast long, ethereal shadows across the cavern. It pulsed gently, a slow, rhythmic beat that was more felt than seen, like the silent, inexorable breathing of a titan. Its surface was incredibly smooth, almost liquid in its appearance, and within its depths I could faintly discern intricate patterns, like frozen lightning or ancient script, swirling and intertwining. The air in this cavern was profoundly cold, colder than anything I had ever experienced. It was a dry, stinging cold that burned my nostrils and lungs with each breath. The metallic tang was still present, but here it was accompanied by a new scent, clean, sharp, almost sterile, like ozone mixed with something mineral. It reminded me of fresh mountain air, if mountain air had a faint undertone of an alien power source. My gaze swept across the cavern floor. It was a vast expanse of the same smooth, obsidian-like material I had walked on, stretching out into the gloom where the crystal's light couldn't reach. But it wasn't empty. Scattered across the floor in seemingly random clusters were more of the desiccated, angular bodies I had seen around the monolith. Here, however, they weren't clustered reverently. They lay haphazardly, as if dropped or perhaps flung by some immense force. Many were shattered, their leathery limbs and hollow skulls splintered, revealing petrified bone beneath. A fresh wave of revulsion and terror washed over me. What had happened here? This place felt like a battlefield or perhaps a dumping ground. The sheer number of these creatures was staggering, far more than in the previous chamber. It was a graveyard of an alien species, entombed beneath the earth, lit by a silent, pulsing crystal. My exhaustion warred with my profound terror. I wanted to collapse, to simply lie down on the frigid, smooth floor and give up. But the light, weak as it was, held an undeniable allure. It was a beacon, a symbol of some kind of energy or life, however alien, and it was moving me forward. I took a tentative step onto the cavern floor. The obsidian-like surface was incredibly cold, biting through the soles of my boots. As I moved closer to the colossal crystal, the rhythmic pulse intensified, vibrating through the floor up my legs and into my very core. It was not a violent tremor, but a subtle, pervasive hum that resonated deep within my bones. It felt almost soothing in a strange, disquieting way, as if it was trying to lull me into a state of acceptance. The patterns within the crystal became clearer as I approached. They were indeed like intricate, flowing symbols, not unlike the stylized eye I had seen in the tunnel, but far more complex, weaving into fractals and mandalas of dizzying complexity. They seemed to shift and reform, never quite static, always in motion, like a liquid tapestry of light. It was mesmerizing, pulling my gaze, threatening to trap me in its silent, glowing depths. I forced myself to look away, to observe my surroundings. The cavern walls, barely visible in the diffuse light, seemed to be made of the same dark, smooth stone, rising vertically for hundreds of feet before disappearing into the unseen ceiling. There were no obvious exits, no other tunnels visible from my vantage point. I was in an immense, enclosed space, deep, deep beneath the earth, surrounded by the remnants of an alien race and bathed in the light of an impossible crystal. My mind, despite the horror and exhaustion, was buzzing with questions. What was this crystal? Was it a natural formation or something constructed? Given its immense size and internal patterns, it felt more like a monumental artifact than a geological oddity. And if it was an artifact, who had built it? The desiccated creatures, or something else entirely, something that had been here even longer? My water bottle was almost empty, and my granola bar was long gone. The cold was seeping into my very bones despite my layers. My breath plumed in thick clouds before me. I needed to find a way out, and soon. This place, for all its alien wonder, was a tomb. I began to walk around the base of the crystal, keeping a respectful distance, searching for anything that might offer a clue. The scattered bodies of the creatures became more frequent here, some lying in broken heaps, others appearing almost intact, their leathery skin pulled taut over their angular bones. I tried not to look too closely, but their empty eye sockets seemed to follow me, silent witnesses to an ancient tragedy. As I rounded the far side of the crystal, I noticed a subtle change in the terrain. The smooth, obsidian-like floor gave way to a section that was cracked and uneven, as if a monumental force had ruptured the surface. Within these fissures, a faint, sickly green light flickered, similar to the light I had seen emanating from the monolith's symbols. Curiosity, that stubborn, dangerous ember, compelled me forward. I stepped cautiously onto the fractured ground. The green light pulsed from within the cracks, casting an eerie glow on the surrounding bodies, making their shadows dance like grotesque puppets. As I peered into one of the wider fissures, the metallic tang in the air grew sharper, and a faint, acrid smell, like burnt electronics or scorched stone, became noticeable. Deep within the crack, I saw the source of the green light. It wasn't another crystal, but something embedded in the very bedrock, glowing with an internal, unstable luminescence. It looked like a network of fine, glowing filaments woven into the stone itself, pulsating with that sickly green energy. It was clearly artificial, a system of some kind, deeply integrated into the cavern's foundation. My eyes followed the network of green light. It seemed to emanate from a specific point within the fractured floor, converging towards a darker, deeper rift. This rift was wider than the others, almost a chasm, plunging into absolute darkness beneath the cavern floor. The acrid smell was strongest here, and the cold was even more intense, as if this chasm was a direct conduit to the deepest, coldest parts of the earth. I knelt down, peering into the chasm. The green light from the filaments faintly illuminated the edges, revealing rough, jagged stone descending into an inky abyss. The vastness of it, the sheer depth, was terrifying. My head swam with a sudden rush of vertigo. This wasn't another tunnel, it was a gaping maw, a geological scar. Then I saw it. Hanging suspended within the chasm, seemingly defying gravity, was another structure. It was smaller than the monolith, perhaps 20 feet in length and roughly conical in shape, tapering to a sharp point at its lower end. It was made of the same dark, impossible stone, but its surface was eerily smooth, almost polished, reflecting the faint green light from the fissures in distorted, sickly hues. Intricate geometric patterns were etched into its surface, not the fluid symbols of the crystal, but sharp, angular designs that hummed with latent energy. This structure was clearly not a natural formation. It was a finely crafted artifact, suspended by an unseen force radiating a silent, formidable power. It felt like a weapon, or perhaps a massive, dormant tool of some unimaginable purpose, and it was humming. Not the gentle pulse of the crystal, but a low, steady thrum, a deep vibration that resonated with the green light from the fissures. A new thought, more terrifying than any other, began to form in my mind. The monolith in the previous chamber, the strange, desiccated bodies, the impossible door, and now this suspended artifact and the colossal crystal, they all felt connected. Pieces of a single, ancient, alien puzzle. This wasn't just a cave system. It was a complex, a site of immense power and forgotten history. I had to get closer to the suspended artifact. It felt like the key to understanding this entire, inexplicable situation. But to do so, I would have to navigate the treacherous, fractured ground around the chasm. The sheer drop into the darkness below was daunting, and a single misstep could send me plummeting into the abyss. Now, taking a deep breath, I carefully stood up. My legs were shaky and my body trembled from the cold, but a surge of desperate resolve pushed me forward. I needed answers. I needed a way out. I began to edge my way along the chasm, moving slowly, testing each foothold before committing my weight. The green light from the glowing filaments cast long, distorted shadows, making the already uneven ground even more disorienting. The metallic, acrid smell grew stronger, burning in my throat. The humming from the suspended artifact intensified, a low, resonant throb that seemed to penetrate my very skull. As I drew closer to the artifact, the patterns on its surface became clearer. They were lines, squares, triangles, and symbols that seemed to defy Euclidean geometry, bending and intertwining in impossible ways. They pulsed with the same green light that emanated from the fissures, a silent, powerful energy. This wasn't a static object, it was alive, or at least active, in some incomprehensible way. I reached a point directly above the artifact, close enough to truly appreciate its impossible nature. It hung perfectly still, its sharp point aimed directly downwards into the darkness, as if poised to strike some unseen target deep within the earth. Its dark, polished surface was cold and smooth, reflecting my distorted image in its alien contours. I reached out a gloved hand, hesitant, drawn by an irresistible urge. My fingers hovered inches from the artifact's surface. The cold radiating from it was intense, piercing through the thick wool of my glove. I could feel the faint vibration, the internal hum thrumming against my fingertips. It was similar to the monolith, but more focused, more potent. Just as my fingers were about to make contact, a sudden, sharp crack echoed through the cavern. I froze, my hand suspended in midair. The sound had come from behind me, from the direction of the immense crystal. My head snapped around, my eyes straining to pierce the dim, ethereal light. The colossal crystal, which had been pulsing gently with its milky white glow, was now flickering wildly. The internal patterns, which had been flowing smoothly, began to writhe and contort with alarming speed. The entire structure seemed to be convulsing, sending ripples of light and shadow across the cavern. And then the sound came again, louder this time, a deeper, resonant groan that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the crystal. The ground beneath my feet trembled violently, sending me stumbling backwards. I scrambled for purchase, my heart hammering against my ribs. The crystal was destabilizing. Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. This was it. This place, this ancient alien complex, was collapsing. I had to get out. But where was the exit? The only way I knew was back through the tunnel, past the monolith, back to the impossible door. I turned to flee, but another, more immediate threat presented itself. From within the fractured ground around the chasm, the green glowing filaments began to surge. The light intensified dramatically, flaring with a blinding, unhealthy brilliance. And from the deepest, widest fissure, the one where the suspended artifact hung, a new sound began to emerge. A low, guttural growl, deep and resonant, that vibrated up from the abyss, rattling my teeth. The suspended artifact, which had been humming, now began to rotate slowly on its axis, its sharp point tracing an invisible circle in the air. The geometric patterns on its surface flared with the sickly green light, and I could feel a powerful surge of energy emanating from it, a pressure that pushed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. The growl from the chasm intensified, becoming a monstrous roar that echoed through the vast cavern, shaking the very foundations of the earth. The massive crystal continued to convulse, its light flickering erratically, casting monstrous, shifting shadows. And then, from the depths of the chasm, something began to ascend. It was immense, far larger than the suspended artifact, and moved with a terrifying slowness. The green light from the fissures in the artifact illuminated it partially, revealing a colossal, indistinct shape, vaguely serpentine, its surface shimmering with a dark, oily sheen. It was too vast, too utterly alien to fully comprehend. It coiled upwards, filling the chasm, its unseen head rising towards the suspended artifact, towards me. A desperate, primal scream tore from my throat. This was it. This was the entity, the presence I had felt awakening in the previous tunnel, the source of the alien lament. It was real, it was here, and it was ancient beyond comprehension. I turned and ran, blindly, frantically, across the fractured ground. The growling roar shook the cavern, and the air around me felt electrified, crackling with raw, dangerous energy. My feet slipped on the smooth, treacherous stone, and I nearly fell, catching myself just in time. The immense crystal behind me continued its death throes, erupting with blinding flashes of light and deafening groans. My only thought was to get back to the tunnel, back to the monolith chamber, back to the door. It was a faint, desperate hope, but it was all I had. I scrambled back towards the colossal crystal, the epicenter of the current chaos, hoping to find the entrance to the tunnel on its far side. The ground continued to shake, and fragments of rock, dislodged by the tremors, began to rain down from the unseen ceiling. The metallic, acrid smell was overwhelming, burning my eyes and lungs. The creature from the chasm was still rising, its immense form filling the air with a palpable sense of ancient malice. I risked a glance over my shoulder. Its head, still indistinct in the green-tinged gloom, was now level with the suspended artifact, which had ceased its rotation and was now glowing with a furious, unstable green light. It seemed to be responding to the creature, perhaps even interacting with it. I reached the far side of the crystal, where I believed the tunnel entrance was. But the ground here was even more shattered, and the immense crystal itself was now actively fracturing, sending out spiderweb cracks across its surface, each illuminated by blinding white flashes. The entrance to the tunnel, if it was even still there, was obscured by falling debris and the overwhelming, flickering light. "No," I screamed, my voice raw with desperation. "No, no, no." I clawed at the fractured rock, trying to find any sign of the tunnel entrance, any familiar landmark. But the entire area was a chaotic mess of splintered stone and surging light. The creature's roars echoed through the cavern, punctuated by the agonizing groans of the dying crystal. Suddenly, a massive chunk of the crystal, illuminated by a blinding internal flash, broke free and plummeted towards the ground, narrowly missing me. The impact sent a shockwave through the cavern, knocking me off my feet. I landed hard on the cold, unforgiving stone, my head cracking against something sharp. A blinding pain lanced through my skull, and for a moment, the world dissolved into a dizzying vortex of light and sound. When my vision cleared, everything was a blurred, green-tinged nightmare. My head throbbed, and a warm, sticky liquid trickled down my temple, but the most terrifying sight awaited me. The impact of the crystal fragment had ripped open a new section of the cavern floor. Where there had been solid stone, there was now a gaping hole, a dark, maw-like opening that plunged downwards. And from this new chasm, a different kind of light began to emerge, not the milky white of the crystal, nor the sickly green of the suspended artifact. This was a soft, pulsating violet, a deep, unsettling hue that seemed to devour the other lights. And with it, a new sound, a low, rhythmic thrum, 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 faster and more insistent than the monolith's beat, vibrating from the depths of this new abyss. It was a mechanical sound, unmistakably so, but also imbued with an almost organic quality, like the beating of a gigantic alien engine. The creature from the original chasm had paused its ascent, its vast, indistinct head now facing this new opening, its roars momentarily silenced. Even the convulsive throes of the dying crystal seemed to briefly abate, as if all the impossible forces in this cavern had turned their attention to this new, violet-lit abyss. My mind, despite the pain and terror, registered the change. This was a new development, a new layer to this impossible nightmare. The violet light grew stronger, pushing back the oppressive green and white, casting an entirely different ethereal glow over the vast cavern. The metallic scent shifted, too, taking on a new, almost electrical tang, sharp and clean, cutting through the older, fetid odors. I pushed myself up, groaning, my head reeling. I had to make a choice. Go back towards the uncertain path of the original tunnel, which might be collapsed, or descend into this new, violet-tinged abyss whose origins and purpose were utterly unknown. But the growling creature, the collapsing crystal, the vibrating, suspended artifact, everything here was a threat. This new opening, however terrifying, offered a path away from immediate destruction. With another surge of adrenaline, I staggered towards the new chasm. The violet light poured out of it, illuminating a dizzying descent. It wasn't a natural fissure. This opening was perfectly circular, smooth-edged, clearly artificial, like a massive vertical shaft. The rhythmic thrum-thrum-thrum grew louder, more insistent, pulling me forward with an almost magnetic force. I peered down into the shaft. It plunged downwards into the violet light, revealing a perfectly smooth, circular tunnel, seemingly constructed from the same dark, polished stone. There were no visible handholds, no ledges, nothing to aid a descent. It was a sheer drop into the unknown. But as I watched, something began to happen within the shaft. From the walls, subtle lines of violet light, previously unseen, began to pulse and extend, forming a series of glowing platforms, appearing and disappearing in a rhythmic sequence like phantom steps materializing from the void. They were perfectly horizontal, glowing with the same vibrant violet light, hovering in defiance of gravity. It was a transport system. An alien elevator leading deeper into whatever this place was. The creature from the chasm let out another, earth-shattering roar, its vast body now beginning to coil and twist towards the new opening. The suspended artifact above the original chasm pulsed with a furious green, and the immense crystal behind me erupted in a final, blinding flash of white light, accompanied by a deafening roar of fracturing stone. The cavern was shaking violently now, large chunks of rock tearing from the ceiling, plummeting towards the floor. I had no choice. This was my only escape. Summoning every last ounce of strength, I launched myself towards the edge of the violet shaft. The platforms were appearing and disappearing too quickly for me to analyze their sequence. I had to trust my instincts or whatever strange impulse was guiding me. I leaped, aiming for the nearest glowing platform as it materialized. My hands scrambled, grasping at the smooth, cold edge. My feet scrabbled for purchase, and for a terrifying moment, I hung precariously, half in, half out of the shaft, the dizzying violet light swirling beneath me. With a grunt of effort, I pulled myself onto the platform. It was solid, smooth, and pulsed gently with the violet light. The thrum-thrum-thrum resonated through my body, a strange, powerful energy. The platform beneath me began to descend, smoothly, silently, carrying me away from the chaos above. I looked up, my eyes wide with terror and awe. The cavern above was dissolving into a maelstrom of light and sound. The vast serpentine creature was thrashing, its roars filling the air. The colossal crystal was shattering, sending fragments raining down. The suspended green artifact was pulsing with a desperate, frantic light, all of it collapsing, tearing itself apart. As I descended further into the violet shaft, the chaotic light and sound of the cavern above began to recede, swallowed by the smooth, dark walls. The violet light from the platforms and the shaft walls became my only world, a mesmerizing, hypnotic glow. The air was cleaner here, crisp and cold, with that sharp electrical tang. The rhythmic thrum-thrum-thrum was constant, a pervasive heartbeat of this impossible alien technology. The descent was long, far longer than I could have imagined. I couldn't gauge the depth, but it felt like I was plunging miles beneath the earth. The platforms continued to appear and disappear, carrying me downwards with an effortless grace. My body ached, my head throbbed, but I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me. I was no longer running from something, I was being transported to something. After what felt like an eternity, the descent began to slow. The violet light intensified slightly, and the rhythmic thrum-thrum-thrum grew louder, but changed its character, becoming less a hum and more a complex, multi-layered pulse. The shaft opened into another immense chamber, but this one was entirely different from the previous two. This chamber was bathed in the violet light emanating from the walls, the floor, and the ceiling, all of which were made of the same dark, smooth, polished stone. But here the surfaces were not raw or uneven. They were perfectly flat, seamlessly joined, forming a vast, geometrically precise space. It was a triumph of engineering, clearly artificial, clearly designed. As my platform reached the floor of this chamber and dissolved back into the wall, I stepped off, my legs wobbly from the long descent. The air here was perfectly still, cold, and utterly devoid of the metallic or fetid scents of the upper chambers. It smelled clean, sterile, almost like a laboratory, but with a faint, sweet undertone I couldn't place. The chamber was circular, easily a mile across, its far walls disappearing into the haze of violet light. And in the very center, rising from the perfectly flat floor, was another colossal structure. But this was no monolith, no ancient crystal. It was a tower. A spire of impossible elegance, reaching towards the unseen ceiling, constructed from the same dark, polished stone, but infused with the same violet light that permeated the chamber. Its surface was covered in a dizzying array of geometric patterns, not etched or carved, but seemingly woven into the very fabric of the stone, pulsing with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The patterns were not random. They were intricate, complex, moving and shifting with a silent, internal logic. This tower was clearly the heart of something immense, a command center, a power generator, a communication nexus. It thrummed with the soft, insistent thrum-thrum-thrum that now filled the entire chamber, emanating from its very core. My eyes, wide with wonder and a renewed sense of dread, scanned the vast space. There were no desiccated bodies here, no signs of ancient conflict or decay. This chamber was pristine, perfectly maintained, as if it had been sealed and preserved for millennia, only now stirred to life by my intrusion. As I took a few steps onto the smooth, violet-lit floor, my boots made no sound. The silence was absolute, save for the rhythmic pulse of the tower. It felt like I was walking on air in a world utterly removed from my own. Then I saw them. Arranged in concentric circles around the base of the tower, like an audience awaiting a grand performance, were structures. They were not monolithic or natural. They were seats, elaborate, angular, throne-like chairs carved from the same dark, polished stone, each one infused with a faint violet glow. There were hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, spread across the immense chamber, all perfectly aligned, all facing the central tower. And each seat was occupied, not by desiccated bodies, but by figures that appeared to be in a state of suspended animation. They were larger than human, slender, with elongated limbs and heads, but their forms were distinct, almost graceful in their stillness. They were clad in what looked like flowing robes of deep indigo, perfectly preserved, their faces obscured by cowl-like hoods. Their skin, visible only in glimpses, was smooth and pale, almost luminescent in the violet light. These were the inhabitants, the creators of this impossible place. They were not dead, not mummified. They were simply waiting, frozen in time, arrayed in silent vigil around their central tower. My breath hitched, my heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The sheer scale of it, the profound, ancient mystery, was overwhelming. I was in a chamber of slumbering gods, a silent council of an alien race, poised on the brink of awakening. The tower pulsed, its rhythmic thrum 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 seeming to resonate directly within my chest, a powerful, hypnotic beat. The geometric patterns on its surface shifted and flowed, and for a fleeting moment I felt a strange connection, a faint whisper of thought, a profound sense of purpose emanating from its core. I was no longer just an observer, I was here in their presence. And the knowledge, the understanding, the sheer immensity of what I had stumbled upon was almost too much to bear. My mind screamed for retreat, for escape, but my legs were rooted to the spot, my eyes wide, fixed on the silent, robed figures. A new detail caught my attention. On the armrest of the nearest seat, a small, crystalline panel glowed softly. It was smooth, translucent, and imbued with the same violet light. On its surface, a single, glowing symbol pulsed. It was the stylized eye I had seen before, but here it was rendered with an impossible precision, its vertical slit pupil seeming to follow my gaze. I felt an undeniable pull and urge to touch it, to interact. It was the same dangerous curiosity that had led me to twist the doorknob, to venture into the tunnel, to brave the collapsing cavern. It was my undoing and my driving force. Slowly, cautiously, I approached the nearest seat. The robed figure sat perfectly still, its cowl-covered head tilted slightly towards the tower. Its hands, long and slender, rested on the armrests, their skin pale and smooth, almost translucent. I could see faint veins beneath the surface, glowing with a soft violet light. They were alive, or something akin to life. My gloved hand trembled as I reached out towards the glowing panel on the armrest. The air around the seat felt thick with a silent energy, a latent power that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. The stylized eye symbol pulsed hypnotically, drawing me in. My finger made contact with the crystal panel. The moment I touched it, a jolt, not of electricity, but of pure information, surged through my hand, up my arm, and into my mind. It was overwhelming, a torrent of images, sensations, and knowledge that flooded my consciousness. I gasped, stumbling backwards, clutching my head as if to contain the sudden deluge. My mind was awash with visions. Impossibly vast star fields, nebulae swirling with impossible colors, galaxies stretching beyond comprehension. I saw intricate mathematical equations, elegant physics theories that defied my understanding, blueprints for star-spanning vessels, and cities built on worlds I couldn't even imagine. And intertwined with all of this was a narrative, a story of a civilization of unimaginable age and power. They were a race dedicated to knowledge, to understanding the fundamental truths of the universe. They traveled through the void, observing, learning, meticulously documenting every aspect of existence. They were explorers, archivists, philosophers of the cosmos. Their primary goal was not conquest or expansion, but discovery, the compilation of the ultimate database of universal truth. They had found our galaxy, found Earth in its primordial stages, a nascent world teeming with the chaotic potential of life. They had observed, always observed, never interfering, never judging. They saw the rise of species, the evolution of consciousness, the slow, halting progress towards intelligence. And they had established this outpost, this deep earth vault, as a permanent observation station, a sanctuary for their most sensitive instruments, a silent library of their accumulated knowledge. The monolith in the previous chamber was a power conduit, drawing energy from Earth's core. The immense crystal was a data repository, storing vast amounts of information. The suspended artifact was a remote sensing array capable of monitoring the planet's entire biosphere, its geology, its atmospheric changes, even the faint whispers of emerging consciousness. And this chamber, this vast, violet-lit space, was their central nexus, their command center, their great library. The figures in the seats were the keepers, the silent, eternal observers meditating, processing, storing, their minds connected to the central tower, to the crystal, to the very pulse of Earth. They were in a state of deep, advanced meditation, a form of hibernation that allowed them to process vast amounts of data over millennia without aging or succumbing to the limitations of their physical forms. The information came in waves, a silent language of pure thought, devoid of words, yet utterly comprehensible. It was beautiful, terrifying, profound. I was seeing the universe through their eyes, understanding their purpose, their sheer, unyielding devotion to knowledge. But then the flood of information began to change. The tranquil images of cosmic exploration and peaceful observation gave way to something darker, more urgent. I saw images of a cataclysm, a distant, violent upheaval in another galaxy, a force, a vast, malevolent entity awakening from a long slumber. It was a force of destruction, of assimilation, consuming worlds, silencing civilizations, leaving behind only void. The Keepers had detected it. They had observed its relentless advance, its inexorable spread across the cosmos. They knew it would eventually reach our galaxy, reach Earth, and their purpose, their ancient prime directive of non-interference, was now in conflict with an even more fundamental imperative: the preservation of knowledge, the safeguarding of life. The visions grew more frantic. The Keepers, in their deep meditation, had begun to stir, to debate, to seek a solution. They knew they could not directly intervene, for that would violate their most sacred tenets. But they could prepare, they could warn, they could, perhaps, guide. And then the final, most terrifying revelation slammed into my mind. The entity from the chasm, the vast serpentine creature I had glimpsed in the collapsing cavern. It was not one of the Keepers. It was not native to this complex. It was a fragment, a probe, a harbinger of the destructive force. It had followed them, found their sanctuary, and was now awakening, preparing to breach their defenses, to consume their knowledge, to silence their silent vigil. The previous chamber, the one with the monolith and the desiccated bodies, that was an outer defensive layer, a place where those who sought to protect this vault had made their final stand against some ancient, unknown threat. The bodies were not Keepers. They were guardians, perhaps another alien race, or even an early attempt by the Keepers to create life forms capable of physical defense. The creature's roars, the collapsing crystal, the fracturing cavern, it was the beginning of the end. The harbinger was breaking through. And by twisting that doorknob, by entering this vault, I had become an unwitting participant in a cosmic war, an ancient struggle that was now reaching its climax. The rush of information began to recede, leaving my mind reeling, my head throbbing with an unbearable pressure. I stumbled back from the console, gasping for air, clutching my head. My legs gave way, and I collapsed onto the smooth, violet-lit floor. The pain was immense, not just physical, but a profound, aching sorrow for the ancient race, for their lost purpose, for the impending doom that now threatened everything. I saw. A profound, aching sorrow for the ancient race, for their lost purpose, for the impending doom that now threatened everything. I saw the universe, beautiful and terrible, laid bare before me, and I was just a minuscule, insignificant creature caught in the crosscurrents of an unimaginable cosmic struggle. My body convulsed, my muscles cramping from the psychic overload. Images flashed behind my closed eyelids, star charts, alien script, the terrifying, shadowy outline of the destructive entity. My own reality, my simple life as a hiker, felt distant, irrelevant. I was no longer Alex, the man from Michigan. I was a vessel, overflowing with alien knowledge, a witness to a truth too vast for human comprehension. A soft, steady pressure began to build in my head, a growing thrum that mingled with the tower's rhythmic pulse. It wasn't painful, not exactly, but it felt like my very brain was expanding, straining against the confines of my skull. The violet light of the chamber seemed to deepen, to intensify, and the figures in the surrounding seats, the slumbering keepers, seemed to shimmer at the edges of my vision. I struggled to push myself up, my limbs heavy, uncooperative. The floor felt impossibly cold against my face, and the scent of ozone and that strange, sweet undertone was sharp in my nostrils. I needed to move to escape this overwhelming chamber, but I didn't know where to go. The descent shaft was behind me, but what waited at the top? Collapse, the harbinger. As I lay there, gasping, trying to regain control of my senses, a new sensation began to ripple through the chamber. It was subtle at first, barely perceptible, but it grew quickly. A warmth, not a physical heat, but an energetic warmth, emanating from the central tower and spreading outwards, engulfing the concentric circles of keepers. The violet light pulsed with a new vibrancy, and the geometric patterns on the tower's surface began to shift with increased speed, a silent, internal dance of immense power. Then the keepers began to stir. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic awakening. It was slow, gradual, almost imperceptible. First, a faint tremor ran through their slender frames. Then their cowl-covered heads, which had been perfectly still, began to tilt ever so slightly, as if listening to some distant call. A collective hum, far deeper and more resonant than the tower's pulse, began to emanate from them, a sound that resonated in my chest, easing the frantic beating of my heart. It was a sound of immense age, of awakening consciousness. My eyes, wide with a mixture of terror and awe, watched as the nearest keeper, the one whose console I had touched, moved. Its long, slender fingers, previously resting inert on the armrests, slowly curled, its pale, translucent skin glowing faintly with the violet light that pulsed beneath its surface. Then, with an elegant, almost fluid motion, it lifted its head. The cowl, which had obscured its face, remained in shadow, but I could feel its gaze. A profound, ancient intelligence, far beyond human, focused on me. It was not hostile, not curious in a human sense, but something deeper, more analytical, more accepting. It was as if it understood my presence, my accidental intrusion, not as a threat, but as a variable, a catalyst. The hum from the keepers intensified, becoming a chorus of silent understanding. The central tower flared with a brighter violet light, and the geometric patterns on its surface dissolved and reformed into new, more complex configurations, flowing like liquid logic. I could feel information, now more structured, more digestible, subtly entering my mind. It was no longer a deluge, but a gentle stream, guiding my thoughts. "You have awakened us," the thought formed in my mind, not as a voice, but as a direct infusion of meaning. It was the keeper, communicating with me through a form of telepathy, a sharing of consciousness. Your touch, a resonance with the life signal of this planet, stimulated the primary nexus. Our ancient protocols, designed for a time of dire need, have been activated. My mouth was dry, my throat constricted. I tried to speak, but no words would come. My human language felt utterly inadequate in this place. "We understand your shock, your fear," the keeper continued, its thought voice calm and infinitely patient. "But there is little time for such emotional responses. The harbinger of the void, the entity you glimpsed, is breaching the outer defenses. Its purpose is singular, to consume, to assimilate, to silence all knowledge that is not its own. Its presence here threatens the very repository of our millennia of observation. I managed a weak nod, the knowledge of the Harbinger's threat already vivid in my mind. What can I do? I whispered, my voice hoarse, barely audible in the vast chamber. The keeper paused, and for a moment the flow of information intensified, as if it was accessing vast databases, considering possibilities. Then the answer came, sharp and clear. Your species, humanity, possesses a unique resonance with this world, a raw, untamed potential, a connection to the planet's bioenergy that our own ancient physiology has long since transcended. This connection is now vital. The Harbinger feeds on structured energy, on refined knowledge. Your wild, chaotic energy, it is an anomaly to it, a disruption. My mind raced, trying to grasp the implications. They needed my chaotic energy. What did that even mean? The suspension device, the keeper's thought continued, and I understood it was referring to the suspended artifact in the upper cavern, the one with the green light. It is the key. It is designed to resonate with deep earth energies. It can be calibrated, adjusted, but its power source is now unstable, corrupted by the Harbinger's influence. It requires a direct bioenergetic conduit, a living catalyst. It was asking me to become that catalyst, to somehow interface with an alien weapon or tool whose purpose I could barely comprehend, to fight a cosmic entity. The sheer absurdity of it would have been laughable if it weren't so terrifyingly real. You possess the necessary resonance, the keeper affirmed, sensing my internal struggle. Your accidental contact with the primary console initiated a preliminary bioscan. You are compatible, more than compatible. You are a unique opportunity. My gaze flickered around the chamber, at the hundreds, thousands of other keepers, all now subtly stirring, their violet glows intensifying, their collective hum rising. This was their last stand. This vast, silent library, this repository of universal truth, was on the brink of being silenced forever. And I, a simple human, was their last, best hope. How? I asked, my voice gaining a desperate edge. How do I do it? What is it supposed to do? The suspension device is an energetic resonator, the keeper explained, the information flowing into my mind with precise diagrams and schematics that, while still alien, conveyed functionality. It draws from the Earth's core, amplifies it, and projects specific energy frequencies. The Harbinger is susceptible to high-frequency bioresonance, to the chaotic, evolving life signals of a vibrant world. Our own constructs are too refined, too ordered. But yours, your species, is a symphony of unpredictable frequencies. It was asking me to blast a cosmic entity with life force, my own life force. It sounded insane, like something out of a science fiction movie. But here, in this impossible chamber, it felt like the only possible truth. You must return to the upper cavern, the keeper instructed. The vertical shaft you descended from, we will stabilize its ascent protocols. The device requires a direct physical interface. You must make contact. The power flux will be extreme. It will demand focus. An absolute will to survive, a primal drive to protect. A primal drive to protect this ancient race, to protect Earth. The thought of my home, of the quiet forest of the world above, now felt more precious and fragile than ever. A surge of defiance, of stubborn human will, began to mingle with my fear. I had stumbled into their war, but it was now becoming my war too. What about the other keepers? I asked, looking at the silent, robed figures. Can't they help? Our physical forms are in a state of deep processing, attuned to the vast data streams. the keeper responded. To fully awaken would take centuries, risking catastrophic data loss. Our collective consciousness, however, will guide you. We will focus the energy, direct the resonance. You are our hands, our direct interface in this critical moment. So I was the only one who could physically act. The weight of that responsibility was crushing. The chamber began to tremble again, a distant, grinding rumble that was distinct from the tower's hum. The harbinger was still breaking through. Time was running out. Go, the keeper urged, its thought voice now laced with an undeniable urgency. The ascent platform awaits. We will open the way. The fate of this world and the knowledge of the universe rests upon your resonance. With newfound resolve, I pushed myself to my feet. My legs still felt like jelly and my head throbbed, but the keeper's thoughts had instilled in me a strange, determined clarity. I was no longer just a terrified hiker. I was an unlikely warrior in an impossible battle. I staggered towards the violet shaft, turning my back on the silent, slumbering council. As I approached, the smooth, circular opening began to pulse with a brighter violet light, and a single, glowing platform materialized silently at its base, waiting for me. I stepped onto it, feeling the familiar, powerful thrum-thrum-thrum resonate through my boots. The platform began its ascent, smoothly, silently, carrying me back towards the chaos and destruction of the upper cavern. As I rose, I looked back one last time at the vast, violet-lit chamber. The central tower pulsed with an intense, vibrant glow, its geometric patterns spinning and reforming with breathtaking speed. And the hundreds of keepers, arrayed in their concentric circles, were now glowing with a uniform, luminous violet, their collective hum a powerful, resonant chord that filled the immense space, a silent symphony of awakening power. They were preparing, they were focusing. They were guiding me. The ascent was faster this time, fueled by the keeper's concentrated energy. The violet light of the shaft grew more intense, blurring the smooth walls into a shimmering tunnel. The rhythmic thrum-thrum-thrum accelerated, becoming a driving, insistent beat that resonated deep within my chest, synchronizing with my own frantic heartbeat. As I neared the top, the chaotic sounds of the upper cavern began to filter down, the monstrous roars of the harbinger, the deafening groans of the fracturing crystal, the ominous rumble of falling rock. The air grew colder and the metallic, acrid scent intensified, mixing with the sharp, clean ozone of the violet shaft. With a final, smooth surge, the platform delivered me back into the upper cavern. I blinked, my eyes struggling to adjust to the blinding, erratic flashes of light. The scene before me was a maelstrom of destruction. The cavern was in full collapse. Massive chunks of rock, some the size of small cars, were raining down from the unseen ceiling, impacting the obsidian floor with deafening crashes. Dust and pulverized stone filled the air, thick and choking. The immense crystalline data repository was in its death throes. Spiderweb cracks now crisscrossed its entire colossal surface, illuminated by blinding, erratic bursts of white light from within. Each flash was accompanied by a screech of fracturing stone, a sound of unimaginable agony. The milky white glow was almost entirely gone, replaced by a desperate, dying brilliance. And the harbinger, my gaze snapped to the original chasm. The vast, serpentine creature had risen further, its colossal head now fully emerged, its indistinct form illuminated by the sickly green light of the fissures and the suspended artifact. It was immense, a horror of cosmic proportions, its oily black skin shimmering with malevolent power. Its roars were no longer just sound, they were a physical force, a resonant wave that battered my body, threatening to rip my eardrums. The suspended artifact, the energetic resonator, hung directly above the Harbinger's head, pulsing with a furious, unstable green light. It was twisting and contorting, struggling against the chaotic energies unleashed by the Harbinger's presence. It was the focus of the Keeper's plan, and now my target. The ground beneath my feet was a fractured mess of splintered obsidian and rubble. I had to get to the artifact. I had to interface with it. The Keeper's silent urging in my mind was clear, precise. The device requires direct contact. Its primary interface is located on its ventral surface, a recessed panel. The power fluctuations are extreme. Be swift, be resolute. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the acrid air burning my lungs. The roaring of the Harbinger, the groaning of the crystal, the crashing of falling rock, it was a symphony of apocalypse. But through it all, the Keeper's silent guidance was a steady anchor in my mind, a roadmap through the madness. I began to move, scrambling over the treacherous, fractured ground towards the chasm. The violet light of the now-dissolved shaft flickered faintly behind me, a ghostly reminder of the sanctuary I had left. My head still throbbed and the exhaustion was profound, but a fierce, primal will to survive, to fight, propelled me forward. As I drew closer to the chasm, the green light from the glowing filaments in the fissures intensified further, creating an eerie, sickly glow on the Harbinger's vast, undulating form. The creature, sensing my approach, or perhaps the shift in energy from the Keeper's focus, turned its immense head towards me. Its eyes, if it had them, were obscured by the green light, but I felt its ancient, terrible gaze, a cold, alien malevolence that pierced my very soul. It let out a guttural hiss, a sound of pure contempt and unfathomable power, and its colossal body began to writhe, threatening to dislodge the suspended artifact above it. The artifact pulsed with an almost blinding green light, its geometric patterns spinning furiously, struggling to maintain stability. I reached the edge of the chasm, the sheer drop into darkness, a terrifying void beneath me. The suspended artifact hung perhaps 15 feet away, directly over the thrashing head of the Harbinger. The heat radiating from it was intense, a burning, acrid energy that prickled my skin, even through my gloves. "You must leap," the Keeper's thought voice urged, cutting through the chaos. "The device's energy field will sustain you briefly. Direct contact is paramount. Aim for the ventral surface." Leap across a 15-foot chasm over a cosmic entity towards an alien device that was violently fluctuating with unstable energy. It was madness. It was suicide. But what choice did I have? Stay here and be crushed by falling rock, or consumed by the Harbinger, or take a desperate chance? I stared at the device at the point where the Keepers directed me, a faint indentation on its dark, polished underside. It was a small target, but it was there. And the Harbinger was still thrashing, coiling, its vast head swaying back and forth, making the leap even more perilous. I focused, pushing down the terror, drawing on that primal will to survive. My mind, still buzzing with alien knowledge, now focused on a single, impossible task. I pictured my home, the quiet woods, the peaceful life I had lost. I pictured the terror of the Harbinger, the silencing of worlds, the annihilation of knowledge, and a fierce, burning anger, a human fury, ignited within me. With a desperate cry, I launched myself forward, leaping across the chasm. For a terrifying, suspended moment, I was airborne, soaring over the thrashing, roaring harbinger. The air crackled with raw energy, and the acrid smell was overwhelming. My body felt light, almost weightless, as if the device's unstable energy field was indeed cushioning my fall, pulling me towards it. My outstretched hand, gloved and trembling, slammed against the smooth, dark surface of the suspended artifact. A jolt, far more intense than anything I had felt before, ripped through my entire body. It was like being struck by lightning, a torrent of green energy searing through my veins, consuming me. I clung desperately to the device, my fingers scrabbling for purchase on its polished surface. My vision swam, consumed by a blinding green light. The harbinger's roar intensified, a sound of pure rage and alarm, as if my touch had provoked it directly. The interface is activated. The keeper's thought voice surged into my mind, now tinged with relief but also profound urgency. Now focus your resonance, channel your life force, project the chaotic frequencies, think of Earth, think of life, think of resistance. I pressed my face against the cold, smooth stone of the artifact, my body convulsing with the immense power flowing through me. It was too much, almost unbearable. My muscles spasmed, my teeth clenched, and a scream was ripped from my throat, drowned out by the chaos around me. But amidst the pain, amidst the overwhelming energy, I began to focus. I pictured the vibrant green of the forest, the rushing waters of the river, the vast blue sky. I pictured the chaotic, beautiful mess of human life, the laughter, the tears, the infinite possibilities. I poured every ounce of my being, every scrap of my will into that image, channeling it, shaping it, projecting it through the device. The green light from the artifact intensified, not with the sickly glow of the fissures, but with a pure, vibrant emerald, a focused beam of raw, elemental life energy. It pulsed and vibrated, humming with a power that shook the very air. And it struck the harbinger. The colossal creature, which had seemed invincible, immune to all harm, recoiled with a shuddering scream. It was not a roar of rage, but of agony, a sound of pure, unadulterated pain. Its oily black surface began to ripple, to convulse, as if consumed by an internal fire. The green light from the artifact, channeled through me, was tearing at its very essence. The harbinger thrashed violently, its immense body lashing out, striking the walls of the chasm with earth-shattering force. The ground beneath me convulsed, and I clung desperately to the artifact, my hands burning, my entire body a conduit for a power I could barely control. The roaring from the crystal intensified, its death throes now joined by the furious shrieks of the harbinger. Maintain focus, the keepers urged, their collective consciousness now a roaring torrent in my mind, bolstering my flagging will. Do not yield, it is vulnerable, it is retreating, drive it back. I squeezed my eyes shut, pouring more of myself into the stream of energy. My body was screaming in protest, every nerve ending aflame, but the image of Earth, of life, of resistance was all that mattered. I was not just Alex anymore. I was a weapon, a shield, an embodiment of everything the harbinger sought to destroy. The emerald beam from the artifact intensified further, blazing with an almost unbearable brilliance. The harbinger screamed again, a high-pitched, chitinous shriek that echoed through the cavern, and its vast, coiling form began to retract, slowly at first, then with increasing speed, back into the depths of the chasm from which it had emerged. Its oily black surface bubbled and steamed, emitting a foul, acrid smoke that choked the air. I felt its retreat, felt the pressure on the energy stream begin to lessen, but I did not stop. I maintained my focus, kept pouring my will, my life force into the device, driving it deeper, driving it back into the abyssal darkness. Finally, with a last despairing shriek, the harbinger disappeared entirely into the chasm, its monstrous form swallowed by the inky blackness below. The green light from the fissures flickered and dimmed, and the acrid smoke slowly began to dissipate. I gasped, my body collapsing against the artifact, my grip weakening. The emerald light from the device faded, returning to its faint, sickly green glow, its geometric patterns once again spinning with a more stable, albeit still urgent, rhythm. The intense heat radiating from it began to subside. I had done it, I had driven it back. A wave of profound exhaustion washed over me, a bone-deep weariness that threatened to consume me entirely. My muscles ached, my head throbbed, and my entire body trembled uncontrollably. I felt drained, utterly spent, as if I had poured every last drop of my vital energy into that desperate act of defiance. "It is done," the keeper's thought voice resonated in my mind, now tinged with a deep, ancient weariness, but also a quiet triumph. The harbinger is repelled, not destroyed, but driven back to slumber. The complex is temporarily secured. Temporarily secured, the words echoed ominously in my mind. This wasn't over. This was just a reprieve. I slowly, painfully released my grip on the artifact. My hands were scorched, raw, despite the gloves, and my fingers felt numb. I pushed myself away, sliding down the smooth surface, landing in a heap on the fractured ground beside the chasm. The cavern around me was still in disarray, a testament to the chaos that had just unfolded. The colossal crystal was still groaning, its cracks still illuminated by flickering white light, but its rapid fracturing had slowed. It was dying, but slowly. Chunks of rock still occasionally plummeted from the ceiling, kicking up dust, but the intense, earth-shattering tremors had ceased. The air was still thick with dust and the metallic, acrid scent, but the crushing malevolence of the harbinger was gone, replaced by a profound, weary silence. I lay there for a long time, gasping for breath, my body shaking, my mind slowly trying to process the impossible events. I had just fought a cosmic entity guided by ancient aliens and saved something, temporarily. Eventually, the Keeper's collective consciousness stirred again in my mind, a gentle, guiding presence. "Your resonance has stabilized the primary energy grid," the Keeper communicated. "The vertical shaft is again accessible. We urge you to return. The information we shared, the connection we forged it has taken a toll on your physiology. You require stabilization." Stabilization. The word sounded comforting, promising an end to the overwhelming pain and exhaustion. I managed to push myself up onto my hands and knees, my muscles screaming in protest. My head throbbed with a dull ache, and the cut on my temple was still seeping blood, now congealed and crusty. I staggered back towards where the violet shaft had been. As I approached, the smooth, circular opening began to pulse once more with its vibrant violet light, and a single platform materialized silently, awaiting my descent. I stumbled onto it, barely able to lift my legs. As the platform began its smooth, silent descent, carrying me away from the ruined cavern, I looked back one last time. The chaos had subsided into a strange, shattered stillness. The enormous crystal continued its slow, agonizing death, its white internal flashes growing fainter, more spaced out. The suspended artifact pulsed with a steady, albeit dim, green light, its job done for now. The chasm lay open, dark, and silent, the harbinger gone, but its presence a lingering, terrifying memory. I closed my eyes, letting the rhythmic thrum of the violet shaft wash over me, a strange lullaby after the apocalyptic battle. The keeper's presence in my mind was a soothing balm, a promise of safety, or at least a temporary reprieve. The descent was again long, but this time it felt like a descent into healing, into sanctuary. The air grew cleaner, colder, and the sharp, electrical tang became more pronounced, yet comforting. The overwhelming exhaustion began to pull me down, blurring the edges of my consciousness. I leaned against the smooth, cold wall of the shaft, fighting to stay awake. When the platform finally reached the bottom and dissolved, I stumbled off it, my legs almost giving out. I was back in the vast, violet-lit command chamber, the circular space filled with the silent, slumbering council of keepers and their central, pulsing tower. The air here was still and clean, utterly pristine, a stark contrast to the ruined cavern above. The rhythmic thrum of the tower was a constant, powerful beat, filling the space with a sense of immense, ancient purpose. My body swayed and I fell to my knees on the smooth, polished floor. The keeper's presence in my mind, which had been a clear, urgent stream of information during the battle, was now softer, more diffuse, a gentle wave of concern and quiet understanding. "You have expended much," the keeper communicated, its thought voice laced with compassion. "Rest, we will begin the process of stabilization. Your physical form, your mind, they require recovery." As it finished, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the tower. The geometric patterns on its surface, which had been flowing with rapid intensity during the battle, now slowed, their movements becoming graceful, deliberate. And from the very base of the tower, a soft, ethereal mist, shimmering with violet light, began to spread outwards, drifting across the smooth floor towards me. The mist was cool, almost icy, as it enveloped me, clinging to my skin, penetrating my clothing. It didn't feel like water, it felt like pure energy, a liquid light. As it washed over me, a strange sensation began to course through my body. The pain in my head, the searing burn in my hands, the deep ache in my muscles, all of it began to recede, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. A profound sense of calm, of peace, replaced the terror and exhaustion. It felt like every cell in my body was being gently, expertly repaired, rejuvenated. I lay down on the smooth, cold floor, letting the violet mist wash over me, surrendering to its soothing embrace. The keeper's collective consciousness was a comforting presence in my mind, a silent chorus of ancient guardians watching over me. I closed my eyes, and the last thing I saw was the soft, pulsing violet light of the chamber, the shimmering mist, and the silent, robed figures of the keepers, arrayed in their eternal vigil around the majestic tower. Sleep claimed me deep and absolute, a profound slumber unlike any I had ever experienced. It was not the unconsciousness of exhaustion, but a deliberate, guided sleep, a state of profound restoration. I don't know how long I slept. Time had lost all meaning in this place. It could have been hours, days, even weeks. When I finally began to stir, it was not with a jolt, but a slow, gentle return to awareness, like surfacing from a very deep, very still ocean. The first thing I noticed was the absence of pain. My head was clear, the throbbing ache gone. My hands, which had been raw and burned, felt entirely healed, smooth and unblemished beneath my gloves. My muscles, which had screamed in protest, now felt strong, rested, completely revitalized. Even the hunger and thirst that had plagued me for what felt like an eternity were gone, replaced by a subtle, sustained energy. I opened my eyes. The chamber was still bathed in the soft, vibrant violet light emanating from the tower and the seamless walls. The mist had dissipated, leaving the air clear, crisp, and cold. The keepers sat in their seats, perfectly still, their cowl-covered heads tilted slightly towards the central tower, their violet glows steady and serene. The tower itself pulsed with its rhythmic thrum, 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 a pervasive heartbeat that now felt almost natural, a part of my own internal rhythm. I pushed myself up slowly, testing my body. Every movement was effortless, fluid. I felt stronger, lighter, more attuned to my surroundings. My senses felt sharper, my mind clearer, capable of processing the alien knowledge that still resided within me, not as a chaotic flood, but as an ordered, accessible database. It was as if the stabilization had not only healed my body, but enhanced my very being. As I stood, the nearest keeper, the one I had initially connected with, stirred again. Its head tilted, and I felt its presence in my mind, a gentle, welcoming surge of thought. "You are restored, Alex," it communicated, its thought voice calm and clear. "The stabilization process was successful. Your physical and cognitive functions have been optimized." Optimized, I certainly felt it. My exhaustion was gone, replaced by a deep well of energy. My fear, while still present, was now tempered by a strange, quiet resolve, a sense of purpose. "What now?" I asked, my voice no longer hoarse but clear and steady in the vast, silent chamber. "The harbinger, it will return, won't it?" "Inevitably," the keeper affirmed, its thought voice conveying a deep, ancient understanding of the cosmic struggle. "Its essence is relentless. It will gather strength, seek new pathways. Its influence will persist." "So what's the plan?" I pressed. "How do we stop it permanently?" "Our primary directive remains observation," the keeper communicated. "Direct intervention is complex. It risks disrupting the natural evolutionary path of this world, a path we have meticulously documented for millennia. However, the Harbinger's presence constitutes a catastrophic disruption. Our protocols have shifted. The need for preservation now supersedes non-interference." This was huge. The ancient, unyielding rules of this alien race were bending because of this threat. "The tower," the keeper continued, drawing my gaze to the immense, violet-lit spire in the center of the chamber. "It is the heart of this complex, a nexus of power and data. It can be reconfigured, retasked, from an observation hub to a defensive anchor, but it requires immense power. Power that, with the partial collapse of the upper cavern and the damage to the crystal data repository, is now constrained." "The monolith," I murmured, remembering the first pulsing structure I had found. "In the first chamber, it's a power conduit, right, drawing from Earth's core." "Precisely, it is the core power input for the entire complex. While active, its energy is passively distributed. However, it too can be reconfigured, overloaded, to release its full, unharnessed potential into this central tower." My mind pieced it together. They needed to supercharge the tower, using the monolith as a conduit to turn it into some kind of weapon or defensive system. "And how do we do that?" I asked. "Do I have to go back to the monolith chamber?" "Yes, your unique resonance is still required. The monolith's interface is more rudimentary than the suspended device. It requires a direct, prolonged connection to a resonant biosignature. Your touch, your presence, will allow us to override its passive energy distribution and channel its full power. It sounded even more dangerous than interfacing with the suspended artifact. Overloading a device that was drawing power from the Earth's core, what kind of energies would I be exposed to? The risks are significant, the keeper acknowledged, its thought voice devoid of emotion, simply stating a truth. The power surge will be immense. The pressure on your physical form will be extreme. Your optimization will aid you, but it is not a guarantee. What will the tower do once it's supercharged? I asked, trying to grasp the ultimate goal. It will generate a localized field of pure, chaotic bioresonance, the keeper explained, and images flooded my mind again, though more controlled this time. I saw the earth encased in a shimmering violet aura, pulsating with chaotic, life-affirming energy. A resonant frequency designed to repel, to disrupt, to ultimately drive the Harbinger's influence from this planet. It will form a barrier, a shield, but also a signal, a warning. To all who would seek to silence life. A shield for Earth, a signal to the cosmos. This was their final, desperate gamble. And what happens to me after I do this? I asked, the question hanging heavy in the silent chamber. Your role will be complete, the keeper replied. The link we have formed will dissipate as the tower stabilizes its new function. You will be free to depart the complex. Your memory of these events will remain, a testament to your courage and to a choice made in desperation. A choice made in desperation. I was still a human, still Alex, but I had seen too much to ever truly go back to my old life. The universe was vast, terrifying, and wondrous, and I had played a part in its silent war. All right, I said, a grim determination settling over me. Tell me what I need to do. Lead the way. The keeper nodded, its cowl-covered head dipping slightly. The passage to the monolith chamber will be reopened. We will guide you. Remember your purpose, Alex, the resonance of life itself. The violet light from the tower intensified, and the floor before me shimmered. A section of the seamless wall slid inwards, revealing a dark, smooth tunnel, lit faintly by an internal violet glow. It was smaller than the shaft I had descended, a narrow passage leading back into the unknown. I took a deep breath, the clean, sterile air filling my lungs. I looked at my hands, flexing them. They felt strong. Ready for whatever fresh horror awaited me, I stepped into the tunnel. The passage was indeed narrow, barely wide enough for me to walk comfortably, and it sloped gently upwards. The smooth, dark stone walls gleamed with an internal violet luminescence, casting long, dancing shadows that stretched before and behind me. The air here was still and cold, carrying the same sharp electrical tang as the keeper chamber, but with a faint, almost imperceptible undertone of ozone. My boots made no sound on the polished floor. The silence was profound, broken only by the faint thrum-thrum-thrum that seemed to emanate from the very stone around me, a distant echo of the central tower's pulse. It was less a sound and more a vibration, a constant hum that resonated deep in my bones, a tangible sign of the immense hidden power flowing through this alien complex. As I walked, my newly optimized senses drank in every detail. The subtle shifts in air current, the minute imperfections in the otherwise flawless stone, the barely audible creaks and groans of the subterranean rock far above. My vision, too, felt sharper, allowing me to perceive variations in the violet light that would have been invisible before, noticing how it intensified and faded in complex, rhythmic patterns woven into the very fabric of the tunnel walls. It was as if my mind was processing data on a new, accelerated frequency. The journey was long, far longer than I had anticipated. The tunnel twisted and turned, occasionally opening into small, circular antechambers, perfectly empty save for the pervasive violet glow. These seemed to be relay points, perhaps for energy distribution or structural support, but the keepers offered no specific guidance on them, merely a silent affirmation to continue forward. My body felt tireless, my mind alert. The exhaustion and pain from the Harbinger encounter were gone, replaced by a strange, sustained energy that pulsed through my veins. It was an unsettling feeling, almost alien, to be so perfectly attuned, so perfectly functional after what I had endured. I was still Alex, I thought, still human, but a profoundly altered one. As I continued, the subtle changes began. The violet light, while still dominant, started to blend with faint streaks of green, appearing like ghostly veins beneath the polished stone. The air grew heavier, carrying a familiar though fainter metallic scent, a hint of the corrupted energies from the upper levels. The thrum in my bones grew more insistent, less harmonized, a subtle discord entering its rhythm. I was nearing the first chamber. The keeper's presence in my mind, which had been a comforting, guiding chorus, became more focused now, a single, precise voice. The monolith chamber approaches. Be prepared. The ambient energies there are still volatile. Though stabilized, the impact of the Harbinger's influence remains. I braced myself, slowing my pace. The tunnel widened ahead and the green light became more pronounced, pushing back the violet. The metallic tang in the air grew stronger, biting at my nostrils. I could hear a low, resonant hum now, distinct from the tower's pulse, a deep, powerful vibration that I recognized as the monolith's energy signature. Finally, the tunnel opened into the first vast chamber. The sight was as I remembered it, yet subtly different, viewed through my enhanced perception. The sheer scale was still overwhelming, the cavernous space stretching into the gloom, the colossal monolith dominating the center, its surface pulsating with an unstable green light. But now I saw the intricate web of cracks that laced the walls and ceiling, the fine dust that perpetually drifted through the air, remnants of countless millennia of slow decay and recent seismic activity. The desiccated bodies of the ancient guardians were still there, slumped in their seats, frozen in their final moments. But now, as I looked at them, my enhanced mind saw more than just empty husks. I perceived the faint, residual energy signatures clinging to them, the echoes of their final struggle, their desperate attempt to protect this place. They were not just bodies, they were memorials to a lost cause, a silent testament to a forgotten war. The monolith itself was a terrifyingly beautiful spectacle. It pulsed with a furious, deep green light, its geometric patterns shifting and flowing with a restless energy. The ambient air around it shimmered, visibly distorted by the raw power radiating from its core. The ground nearest to it was scorched, and faint wisps of acrid smoke still curled from a small fissure near its base. The monolith is functional, the keeper confirmed in my mind. Its energy flow has been redirected, focused on this chamber for the immediate task. It awaits your connection. Its primary interface is a direct energy transfer conduit located on its central lower face. It requires direct contact, prolonged contact. You must sustain the link. I approached the monolith, my steps measured, deliberate. The green light intensified, washing over me, and the resonant hum grew into a physical pressure against my chest. The metallic scent was potent here, mingled with the faint, acrid smell of ozone. I could feel the raw power thrumming beneath the cavern floor, flowing into the colossal structure. My gaze fixed on the spot the keeper indicated, a smooth, polished section on the monolith's lower face, devoid of any patterns, perfectly featureless. It was cold, dark, absorbing the light around it, a stark contrast to the glowing patterns elsewhere on the structure. This was the conduit. I reached out my gloved hand, hesitation a brief flicker in my optimized mind. This was it. The second, more dangerous phase of their plan, overloading a planet core power conduit. What could possibly go wrong? My fingers touched the smooth, dark surface. This time there was no initial jolt of information, no overwhelming psychic deluge. Instead, a deep, pervasive warmth spread from my hand, flowing up my arm, through my chest, and into every part of my body. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was immense, a tidal wave of pure, unrefined energy. It felt like being immersed in the earth itself, feeling its ancient, thrumming heartbeat, its boundless, molten power. The monolith's green light flared, intensifying to an almost blinding brilliance. The geometric patterns on its surface began to spin and reform with incredible speed, their rhythm accelerating, becoming frantic. The resonant hum in the chamber deepened, shaking the very floor beneath my feet, vibrating through my bones, my muscles, every cell of my being. The connection is established. The keeper's thought voice resonated, now urgent, precise. Maintain the link. Focus your enhanced resonance. The monolith requires a sustained, directed intention. Will it to channel its full power? Will it to feed the central tower? I pressed my entire hand flat against the monolith, leaning into its immense energy. My eyes squeezed shut, the green light too intense to bear directly. I focused, channeling every ounce of my enhanced will, every fiber of my being into the task. I pictured the central tower, bathed in violet light, transforming, becoming a shield. I pictured the harbinger, driven back, silenced. I pictured Earth, vibrant, alive, protected. The energy surged, becoming almost unbearable. It felt like my very atoms were vibrating, threatening to tear apart under the strain. My body became a conduit, a living wire carrying an impossible current. My muscles tensed, my teeth clenched, and a low groan escaped my lips, lost in the roar of the monolith. The cavern around me began to react violently. The walls groaned, cracks spiderwebbing across their surface, illuminated by the furious green light. Dust and small rocks rained down from the ceiling. The desiccated guardians seemed to tremble in their seats, their ancient forms shaking under the onslaught of uncontrolled power. I felt something happening within me, something beyond mere physical endurance. My consciousness expanded, stretching, embracing the immense power I was channeling. I could feel the Earth's core, a vast, churning ocean of fire, the source of this incredible energy. I felt the pulse of the planet itself, alive, vibrant, powerful, and I felt myself, a tiny spark of human life, attempting to harness that colossal force. Hold, the keeper urged, its thought voice now a raw command, almost a scream in my mind. The threshold approaches, the tower is receiving, but the strain on the monolith is immense. Do not break the link. A searing pain shot through my body, not physical but energetic, as if my very soul was being stretched to its breaking point. I felt a profound resistance from the monolith, a primal urge to revert to its passive state to protect itself from this overload. But I fought back, pushing my will against its ancient protocols, forcing it to yield. The green light from the monolith reached an unbearable crescendo, a pure, blinding emerald that filled the entire chamber. The ground bucked violently beneath my feet, and I was thrown against the monolith, my body pressed flat against its vibrating surface. My head snapped back, and I caught a glimpse of the cavern's ceiling, tearing apart, enormous chunks of rock plummeting down towards the distant floor. This was it, total collapse. The power surge was too great. Just as I thought my body would rupture, just as my consciousness began to fray at the edges, a sudden, sharp surge, a final, immense discharge of energy ripped through me. It was like a cosmic sneeze, a vast, guttural expulsion of power that echoed through the very bedrock of the planet. And then silence. The green light from the monolith abruptly dimmed, fading back to its restless but no longer frantic pulse. The violent tremors ceased. The rain of rock from the ceiling slowed to a trickle, then stopped. The shimmering in the air subsided. I slumped against the monolith, my hand still pressed against its surface, my body trembling uncontrollably. My breath came in ragged gasps, my lungs burning, my entire being aching with a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. This was a deeper, more pervasive weariness than I had felt after the Harbinger encounter, a draining of my very essence. My optimization had allowed me to survive, but it had not made me immune to the toll. "It is done," the keeper's thought voice resonated, a whisper of immense relief. The power surge was successful. The central tower is now fully energized. The process of reconfiguration has begun. I slowly peeled my hand from the monolith. The dark, smooth surface felt cool against my scorched skin. My gloves were frayed, singed, smoking faintly. My entire arm felt numb, tingling with residual energy. I pushed myself away from the monolith, stumbling backwards, my legs wobbling beneath me. The chamber was still and quiet, bathed in the restless green glow of the monolith. The desiccated guardians were once again perfectly still, silent witnesses to the chaos I had unleashed and survived. "Your task here is complete, Alex," the keeper communicated. "Return to the central chamber. The effects of this prolonged energy channel will require immediate attention. The path has been stabilized." The path, I looked around for the opening. Indeed, a section of the wall, previously a seamless expanse of dark stone, now glowed faintly with violet light, outlining a narrow passage, similar to the one I had entered through. It was the way back. With a groan, I began to walk, my steps slow and laborious, a stark contrast to the effortless stride I had possessed just a short while ago. The enhanced state was still there, but it was now overshadowed by the profound exhaustion. My mind, still sharp, was clouded with a deep fatigue. The journey back through the narrow tunnel was a blur. I remember the constant struggle to put one foot in front of the other, the persistent thrum of the complex, now a throbbing ache in my skull. The violet light of the passage seemed to mock my weary eyes. The keeper's presence in my mind was a gentle, sustaining hum, an anchor in the swirling fog of my exhaustion. When I finally emerged into the vast, circular command chamber, it was like stepping into a different reality. The air was clean, crisp, and cold, free of the metallic tang of the monolith chamber. The pervasive violet light was vibrant, alive, radiating from the central tower and the seamless walls. The sight of the central tower sent a jolt of recognition and awe through my exhausted mind. It was no longer merely pulsing with a slow, deliberate rhythm. It was blazing with violet energy, its entire surface a kaleidoscope of shifting, swirling geometric patterns that moved with breathtaking speed. The rhythmic thrum had intensified, becoming a powerful, resonant beat that filled the entire chamber, vibrating through the very air, through my chest, through my bones. It was a sound of immense, focused power, a symphony of a cosmic engine roaring to life. And the keepers, they were no longer merely glowing faintly. Each one was radiating a luminous violet light, their entire forms shimmering with internal power. Their collective hum was now a powerful, resonant chord, a silent, majestic chorus that swelled and receded with the tower's accelerating pulse. Their cowl-covered heads were still tilted towards the tower, but their forms seemed to vibrate with a latent energy, as if on the verge of full awakening. I stumbled forward a few steps, then collapsed onto the smooth, polished floor, too weary to stand. My body convulsed, my muscles cramping, releasing the stored tension from the ordeal. "You have surpassed expectations, Alex." The keeper's thought voice resonated in my mind, now stronger, clearer, imbued with the amplified energy of the tower. The tower is now fully charged. The reconfiguration is underway. The localized field of chaotic bioresonance is forming. As it spoke, I felt a subtle change in the chamber, a new energy permeating the air. It was a warmth, distinct from the energy of the monolith, a living, vibrant warmth that seemed to hum with countless subtle frequencies. It was the chaotic bioresonance they had spoken of, the essence of life itself, now being amplified and projected by the colossal tower. I lay there watching the magnificent spectacle of the tower, feeling the vibrant energy wash over me. The pain and exhaustion were still present, but they were now overshadowed by a profound sense of peace, a quiet awe at what I had become a part of. "The field is expanding," the keeper communicated. "It will soon encompass the entire complex, then extend to the surface. Earth will be shielded. The Harbinger's influence will be cleansed." My eyes, heavy with exhaustion, struggled to remain open. I watched the keepers, their silent, luminous forms arrayed around the blazing tower, their collective consciousness a comforting, powerful presence in my mind. They were still observing, but now they were also acting, their ancient wisdom finally brought to bear in direct defense. "Your link to us, Alex, and to the tower is beginning to dissipate," the keeper said, its thought voice now tinged with a subtle farewell. "As the tower stabilizes its new function, the need for your specific resonance will diminish. The connection will gradually release." I felt it, a subtle loosening, a gentle unwinding of the profound bond that had been forged between us. The torrent of alien knowledge that had once flooded my mind was now receding, becoming a distant, organized memory stored deep within but no longer actively flowing. The enhanced senses, the boundless energy, the perfect clarity, they were fading slowly, gently, as my human form began its slow return to its natural state. A pang of sadness, loss, flashed through me. This incredible connection, this impossible understanding was slipping away. "Do not lament, Alex," the keeper responded, sensing my thoughts. "The knowledge remains. The experience will forever be a part of you. You are forever changed. A witness, a participant, and a survivor. Your essence is now interwoven with the defense of this world." As it spoke, the central tower emitted a final, powerful surge of violet light, a silent, internal explosion of energy that permeated the entire chamber. The geometric patterns on its surface, which had been spinning wildly, now slowed, coalescing into a single, complex, and beautiful design that pulsed with a steady, deep violet glow. The rhythmic thrum-thrum-thrum settled into a powerful, constant beat, a deep, resonant hum that was no longer overwhelming, but utterly foundational. The air in the chamber vibrated with the presence of the new energy field, a gentle, pervasive hum that spoke of immense, silent power. The violet light emanating from the keepers softened, returning to their serene, steady glow, their collective hum settling into a harmonious, ancient chord. The silence that followed was profound, deeper than before. The chamber, the tower, the keepers, they had all reached a new state of being, a new equilibrium. The defense of Earth was now established. "Our work here is complete," the keeper communicated, its thought voice now calm, serene, a final benediction. "The path to the surface will open. You are free, Alex. Go live, remember." I pushed myself up, slowly, feeling the return of my human limitations, the subtle aches and pains of a body that had been pushed to its absolute breaking point. The exhaustion was still profound, but the immediate crisis was over. I was tired, bruised, but alive, and changed, fundamentally changed. A section of the seamless wall before me, directly opposite the entrance to the monolith tunnel, began to shimmer. It slid silently inwards, revealing a dark, vertical shaft, not like the descent shaft of the Keeper chamber, nor the narrow passage to the monolith. This one was different. It was unlit, but a faint, natural light filtered down from above, suggesting a much shorter distance to the surface. It was jagged, rough-hewn, clearly a natural tunnel, perhaps a fissure, now artificially revealed and stabilized. The cool, fresh air of the surface, with a faint hint of pine and damp earth, drifted down to me. The way out. I took one last look at the magnificent chamber. The blazing tower, the silent, luminous keepers, arrayed in their eternal vigil, guardians of knowledge and now, protectors of a world. A profound gratitude, mingled with an almost unbearable sadness, washed over me. I had been a pawn, a catalyst, but I had also been a participant in something truly extraordinary. With a final nod to the silent council, I turned and walked towards the opening. Each step was heavy, but each step was forward. As I reached the mouth of the shaft, I paused, taking a deep breath of the fresh, earthy air that now filled my lungs, a stark contrast to the sterile air of the alien complex. I began to climb, pulling myself up the rough, uneven surfaces of the natural tunnel. It was a slow, arduous ascent, my strength flagging with every foot gained. But with each upward movement, the natural light grew stronger, the earthy scent more pronounced, the sounds of the world above becoming clearer, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the whisper of the wind. My enhanced perception was fading, replaced by the familiar limitations of my human senses. But I still carried the echoes of alien knowledge, the vastness of the cosmos, the terror of the harbinger. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, my outstretched hand broke through the surface. I pulled myself out, gasping, onto solid ground. I was back in the forest. The sun, bright and golden, streamed through the canopy of trees, dappling the forest floor with light and shadow. The air was cool and crisp, laden with the scent of pine needles, damp earth, and decaying leaves. Birds sang in the branches above, their melodies a joyous, chaotic symphony. I lay there for a long moment, stretched out on the soft moss and pine duff, letting the sunlight warm my face, feeling the familiar, reassuring texture of the forest floor beneath my hands. My clothes were torn, my body ached, and my face was streaked with dirt, but I was out. I was alive. I pushed myself up slowly, my muscles protesting. I looked around, trying to discern where I was. The entrance to the tunnel had closed, leaving no trace. The ground was undisturbed, covered by a thick layer of moss and fallen leaves. There was no sign of an ancient vault, no cosmic battle, no alien guardians, just the quiet, peaceful forest. But I knew what lay beneath. A shield humming with the chaotic resonance of life itself, silently protecting this fragile, beautiful world. I was alone, utterly alone in the vast, indifferent wilderness, but I was not truly alone. The echo of the keeper's farewell, the lingering knowledge of the cosmos, pulsed faintly in my mind. I stood up, swayed for a moment, then straightened. My old life, my simple hike was gone, irrevocably shattered. I was a different man now, burdened by impossible truths, forever changed by the silent war beneath the earth. The sun was high in the sky. I didn't know how long I had been gone, but it felt like days, weeks, an eternity. I had to find my way back, find civilization. But the thought of returning, of trying to explain, was a daunting, almost laughable prospect. How could I tell anyone what I had seen, what I had done? I turned, picking a direction, and began to walk. My steps were slow but determined. The forest was familiar, yet utterly alien now, seen through the lens of cosmic knowledge. Every rustle of leaves, every chirping bird, every ray of sunlight hummed with a deeper significance, a vibrant, chaotic symphony of life that was now silently protected. I was free, but the universe and its endless, terrifying secrets would always be a part of me. The sun beat down through the canopy, a warm, familiar presence that felt both comforting and utterly alien. I picked a direction, arbitrary and guided only by a vague sense of north that had once been instinct but now felt like a relic of a past self. Each step was a deliberate act, a struggle against the profound exhaustion that dragged at my limbs. My body ached, a deep, persistent thrumming that was a counterpoint to the distant, internal hum of the keeper's shield. My clothes were shredded, my skin grimy and scratched, but the deeper burns and aches from the monolith and artifact encounters had miraculously healed. The keeper's stabilization process had been thorough, leaving me a paradox of outer wreckage and inner rejuvenation, now fading. The forest, once a place of simple beauty and solace, was now a tapestry of profound meaning. Every rustle of leaves was a chaotic symphony of growth, every insect a testament to life's relentless drive. I saw the energy in everything, the subtle interplay of forces that sustain this fragile ecosystem, now silently protected by the violet hum beneath. The world hadn't changed, but my perception of it had been irrevocably altered. My mind, though no longer flooded with the torrent of alien data, retained a deep, internal library of cosmic truth. I knew of worlds silenced, of the harbinger's inexorable hunger, of civilizations far grander and more ancient than humanity. This knowledge was a heavy cloak, insulating me from the simple pleasures of the forest, yet connecting me to them with a new, fierce protectiveness. Hours bled into one another. My internal clock was shattered, but the sun's slow arc across the sky gave me some sense of progression. Thirst began to claw at my throat, and the gnawing emptiness in my stomach returned. The keepers had healed me, optimized me, but they hadn't fundamentally changed my human needs. I found a small stream, its water icy cold and clear, and drank deeply, scooping it up with cupped hands. The familiar taste, earthy and pure, was a stark contrast to the sterile air of the complex. As I moved, a low, persistent hum resonated in the back of my mind. It wasn't the thrum-thrum-thrum of the central tower, nor the frantic roar of the monolith. It was a quieter, more diffuse vibration, a gentle echo of the Earth's newly activated shield. It was a constant reminder, a silent promise that the world above was now safer for a time. The thought of returning to civilization, to explaining what I had seen and done, felt like an insurmountable hurdle. How do you tell someone you fought a cosmic entity, guided by ancient aliens, and activated a planetary defense system? They would think me mad, traumatized, or both. The isolation of my experience pressed down on me, heavier than any physical burden. Late afternoon light slanted through the trees when I finally stumbled upon a game trail, faint but distinct. It was a thread of familiarity, a sign that other humans had been here, a lifeline back to my own kind. I followed it, my steps picking up a renewed, desperate pace. The trail wound its way through dense undergrowth, eventually widening into a more defined path. The air began to shift, carrying the faint, smoky scent of wood fires and the distant, almost imperceptible hum of an engine. My enhanced senses, though fading, still picked up on these subtleties long before my normal self would have. Hope, a fragile, almost forgotten emotion, began to bloom in my chest. Then a voice, distant, muffled, but undeniably human. "Hello, anyone out there?" Ranger Morales checking the perimeter. My heart leaped. A ranger, authority, someone who might be able to help or at least not immediately dismiss me as a raving lunatic. I pushed through a final thicket of bushes, emerging onto a narrow gravel road. A forest green pickup truck was parked 100 yards down, and a figure in a uniform stood beside it, scanning the tree line with binoculars. He was a stocky man with a neatly trimmed beard and a weathered cap. I opened my mouth to call out, but my voice caught. It was suddenly hoarse, unaccustomed to speech after so long in silence. I cleared my throat, taking a deep breath. "Hello," I managed, the word a raw croak. The ranger's head snapped towards me, his binoculars dropping. His eyes, wide with surprise, took in my disheveled appearance, torn clothes, wild hair, dirt-streaked face, and the desperate, wild look I knew must be in my eyes. "Whoa, son, you look like you've been through a ringer," he exclaimed, his hand instinctively going to the radio clipped to his belt. "You all right? What happened?" I walked towards him slowly, trying to project an air of calm I didn't feel. I got lost for a few days, fell down a crevice. It was disorienting. The lie felt hollow, pathetic. My body language, my aura, my very being was screaming, cosmic battle survivor. The ranger's gaze lingered on my eyes, then dropped to my still trembling hands, noticing the faint singe marks on my gloves. "A few days?" he questioned, skepticism creeping into his voice. "We've had a section of the forest closed off for a week. Seismic activity, they're saying. You must have been in there a while." He eyed me suspiciously. "What exactly were you doing in a closed-off section, son?" My mind raced. Seismic activity. That had to be the Harbinger's breakthrough, the collapse of the upper cavern, the monolith's overload. It was already public knowledge, filtered through official channels. "I didn't know it was closed," I said, trying to sound convincing. "I was on a multi-day hike off-trail, got turned around, then I fell. Everything was shaking down there." He seemed to consider my words, his gaze still sharp. "You look like you've seen a ghost, or a bear, or both." He slowly unclipped his radio. "All right, let's get you back to the station. We'll get you cleaned up, get you some food, and then we'll figure out what exactly happened." The drive back to the ranger station was surreal. The world, so ordinary, felt profoundly alien. The trees whizzing by, the clear blue sky, the ranger's mundane chatter about weather and trail conditions. It was all a thin veneer over the colossal, terrifying truths I now carried. The ranger, whose name was Dave, kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, his expression a mixture of concern and guarded curiosity. I tried to answer his questions simply, vaguely, sticking to the lost hiker, minor fall narrative, but I could feel his skepticism growing with each halting, understated response. At the small, rustic ranger station, Dave led me inside. It was a cramped office, smelling of coffee and pine cleaner. He offered me a stale granola bar and a bottle of water, which I devoured ravenously. Then he produced a first aid kit and gently began to clean the dirt and grime from my face, revealing the faint cut on my temple, now a thin, barely visible line, healed with impossible speed. "You're lucky, son," he mumbled, dabbing antiseptic. "That could have been a lot worse." I just nodded, unable to meet his gaze. My luck had nothing to do with it. My survival was a testament to alien technology and a desperate gamble. While I was finishing the granola bar, another ranger, a younger woman named Sarah, entered. She took one look at me and whistled softly. "Rough one, huh, Dave? What's his story?" Dave shrugged, says he got lost, fell down a crevice, been out for a week apparently, doesn't remember much. We gotta get him to the hospital just for a checkup. Concussion maybe. A hospital? The thought sent a jolt of anxiety through me. Doctors, tests, questions I couldn't answer. They would find nothing, yet everything. My body was healed, but my essence was still humming with residual alien energy. Would their machines detect it? Would they see the cosmic truths etched into my very soul? "I'm fine," I said quickly, perhaps too quickly. "Just tired, I just need to get home." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Home? Do you have ID, a phone number? We need to contact someone." I reached into my pocket, pulling out my wallet, my driver's license, a crumpled $20 bill, a few credit cards. They felt flimsy, insignificant. My phone, I realized, was probably still at the bottom of the chasm, or shattered from the impact of my fall, or simply drained of power. As I handed over my license, a small metallic flash caught my eye on the floor. It was a thin, almost invisible shard of crystalline material, no bigger than my thumbnail. It pulsed faintly with a deep violet light, so subtle it was almost imperceptible in the fluorescent lighting of the ranger station. It was a remnant from the Keeper complex, a piece of the vast data repository, or perhaps a fragment from the ascent shaft. It must have been clinging to my clothes. My enhanced perception, still lingering, allowed me to see its faint glow. The rangers, bless their normal human eyes, saw nothing. I quickly bent down, pretending to adjust my bootlace, and scooped up the shard, tucking it into my pocket. A piece of impossible proof, a secret artifact from another world. The rangers took down my information. They made calls. The local police were contacted, a formality for anyone lost and found in the wilderness, especially given the seismic activity in the area. A small town deputy, a tired-looking man named Miller, arrived an hour later. He asked more questions, his gaze sharper, more suspicious than Dave's. He wanted to know exactly where I had been hiking, what trail I started on, how I ended up so far into a restricted area. "Look, deputy," I said, my voice growing weary, "I'm exhausted. I barely remember anything after I fell. I just want to go home." Deputy Miller sighed. "We understand that, son, but there's been some unusual activity around here. We just need to make sure you're not involved in anything more than just a bad hiking trip." He glanced at the detailed map on the wall. The tremors, the energy readings, it's all centered around that old mining claim deep in the restricted zone. That's a good 20 miles from any established trail. How exactly did you get all the way out there? My blood ran cold. The old mining claim, that had to be the surface entrance, the forgotten gateway to the complex. They knew. Or at least they were investigating the anomalous activity in the precise location of the entrance. This was more complicated than I had imagined. I don't know, I repeated, frustration creeping into my voice. I don't know how far I walked. I was disoriented. I was trying to find help. I just remember falling. A big crack opened up and everything went dark. I paused, thinking quickly. When I got out, everything was still shaking, and there was a strange green light coming from somewhere down in the ground. The Rangers exchanged glances. Deputy Miller leaned forward, his expression suddenly intense. Green light, you say? Can you describe it? I tried to keep my description vague, truthful, but unhelpful. Like a glow, faint, pulsing, and the air felt electric, like a storm was coming. It was enough to pique their interest, but hopefully not enough to raise impossible alarms. They kept me at the ranger station for what felt like an eternity, mostly waiting for a ride to the nearest town with a small hospital. Eventually, an ambulance arrived. The paramedics were kind but insistent on a full checkup. The ride to the hospital was a blur of flashing lights and probing questions, all of which I deflected with my practiced, exhausted, disoriented, mild amnesia routine. At the hospital, it was more of the same. Doctors, nurses, blood tests, x-rays, neurological exams. To their confusion, every test came back perfectly normal. My vital signs were excellent, my blood worked clean, no signs of concussion or internal injury. It was as if I had simply taken a very long nap in the woods. They found no explanation for my severe exhaustion, my disheveled state, or my vague story, but they also found no physical ailment. I was released that night with a clean bill of health and a stern recommendation for psychological evaluation. They gave me a change of clothes, an oversized hospital gown and paper slippers, and called a taxi. The irony was not lost on me. I had just saved the world from a cosmic horror, and they thought I needed a shrink. The taxi dropped me off at the nearest bus station. It was late past midnight. The station was deserted, save for a few figures slumped on benches. I bought a ticket for the first bus heading towards my home city, my hands trembling as I counted out the cash. I still had the crystalline shard tucked deep in my pocket, a secret warmth against my thigh. The bus ride was long and uncomfortable. I slumped in my seat, staring out at the passing darkness, the highway lights blurring into streaks of orange and white. My mind replayed the events, trying to make sense of the impossible. The keepers, the harbinger, the shield, it was all real, and I was the only one who knew. Over the next few days, I tried to reclaim my life. I went home to my small apartment, a familiar sanctuary that now felt like a fragile bubble of ignorance. The quiet routine of work, groceries, and solitary evenings felt almost unbearable. The world had expanded, terrifyingly, beautifully, and I couldn't unsee it. News reports flickered on the television. Seismic anomalies continue in national forests, mysterious energy spikes detected, government officials investigate unexplained phenomena. They spoke of satellite images showing subtle, circular disturbances in the forest canopy, of unusual atmospheric ionization, of animal behavior changes. It was all real. It was all connected to what I had done. The shield was working silently, subtly, reshaping the environment, pushing back against the lingering corruption of the harbinger. The feeling of being watched, a remnant of the keeper's collective consciousness, was now gone, but the knowledge of their silent vigil of the ancient struggle remained. I started researching late into the night, poring over obscure scientific papers, fringe theories, ancient myths. I looked for patterns, for echoes of the harbinger, for any mention of cosmic entities or deep earth structures. I found nothing conclusive, only fragments that, to my new understanding, hinted at the vastness of what lay hidden. A week later, a plain, unmarked sedan pulled up outside my apartment building. Two figures emerged, dressed in dark suits. They were impeccably professional, utterly unremarkable. My enhanced senses, however, screamed at me. These were not local police. These were something else. They knocked on my door. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew this was coming. My vague story, the unexplained phenomena in the forest, my presence in a restricted zone, it had all added up. I opened the door, trying to appear nonchalant. "Can I help you?" The man in front, tall with sharp, intelligent eyes, held up a badge. "Mr. Alex Carter, my name is Agent Thorne. This is Agent Davis. We're with a specialized department. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your recent hiking trip." His voice was calm, but his eyes were calculating, missing nothing. I invited them in, my apartment suddenly feeling small and exposed. We sat in my living room, the agents on my couch, me in an armchair. The air was thick with unspoken tension. "We understand you were found in the National Forest last week after several days missing," Agent Thorne began, his voice smooth. "The rangers and local authorities were satisfied with your explanation of being lost. We, however, have a few more questions regarding the unusual circumstances surrounding your reappearance." "Unusual circumstances?" I feigned confusion. "I was lost. I fell. It was a bad trip, that's all." Agent Davis, a woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, spoke next. "Mr. Carter, satellite imagery of the forest has detected a localized, highly unusual atmospheric event in the precise area where you were recovered. We're talking about energy fluctuations, ionization spikes, even a temporary disruption in local gravity readings, all of which ceased shortly after you emerged." My blood ran cold. The shield, its activation had not gone entirely unnoticed. "Also," Thorne continued, his eyes fixed on mine, "we have reports of unprecedented seismic activity, far deeper than any known fault lines in that region. Activity that mysteriously quieted down at roughly the same time the atmospheric anomalies occurred. And you, Mr. Carter, were right in the middle of it all." "I told the deputy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I felt the shaking. I saw a green light from deep in the ground. I fell. That's all I know." Thorne leaned forward, his voice dropping slightly. "Mr. Carter, we're not local law enforcement. We're not here to charge you with trespassing. We believe you encountered something significant, something that aligns with other anomalous events we've been tracking globally." Globally, the Harbinger's influence was not limited to this mountain. It was a cosmic threat touching other parts of the world, other worlds. "What exactly do you think I encountered?" I challenged, testing them. Thorne paused, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "We don't know precisely, but we have theories that suggest ancient, unknown forces, extraterrestrial influences, and deep Earth technologies." He watched my face for a reaction. I kept my expression neutral. Sounds like a science fiction movie. Davis scoffed softly. "Mr. Carter, we have reason to believe that the crevice you fell into may not have been entirely natural, that you may have been exposed to something profound. Your medical records, while normal, showed some unusual cellular regeneration markers quickly dismissed as an anomaly. But when combined with your vague story, your location, and the subsequent events, it paints a very different picture." They knew more than I thought possible. They were tracking this. Had the keepers anticipated this? Had they known that their defense system would inevitably draw the attention of humanity's hidden protectors? "What do you want from me?" I asked, cutting to the chase. "Truth," Thorne said simply. "We want the truth, Mr. Carter. What did you see? What did you do? We believe you hold vital information that could protect this planet." The words echoed the Keeper's own directive: protect this planet. The irony was almost overwhelming. I hesitated. How much could I tell them? How much would they believe? And what would be the consequences? If I told them everything, I might be locked up, experimented on, or silenced. If I told them nothing, they would continue to investigate, perhaps stumble upon the complex, and inadvertently reveal the Keepers to a terrified, unprepared world. The Keepers had chosen non-interference for a reason, but they had also shifted their protocols in the face of the Harbinger. "I need to know who you are," I pressed. "What organization are you with? What exactly are these theories?" Thorne exchanged a look with Davis. "We are part of a multinational initiative, a clandestine organization dedicated to studying and mitigating existential threats that fall outside conventional understanding. We monitor anomalous phenomena, investigate extraterrestrial incursions, and safeguard humanity from what it doesn't know exists." He paused, then added, "Think of us as the ultimate line of defense, and we believe you just crossed it." His words were delivered with a quiet authority that chilled me. They were real, they were serious, they were humanity's secret guardians. "All right," I said, a decision forming in my mind. The Keepers had chosen me as their conduit, their interface. Perhaps it was now my role to be a bridge, however fragile, between their ancient wisdom and humanity's desperate struggle. "I'll tell you what I can, but you have to understand it's unbelievable." Thorne nodded slowly. "We're used to unbelievable, Mr. Carter. Start from the beginning, everything you remember." And so I began to speak, recounting the impossible journey. The falling, the endless shaft, the cavern of light, the ancient, silent Keepers, their thought voices, the terrible approach of the Harbinger, the desperate battle, the connection to the artifact, the channeling of life force, the retreat of the horror. I described the monolith, the overloading of Earth's core power, the final activation of the shield, the long climb out. I omitted no detail, no fear, no moment of awe. As I spoke, the crystalline shard in my pocket felt warm, a silent testament to the impossible truth. The agents listened, utterly still, their faces betraying no emotion, no skepticism, only intense concentration. They took no notes, but their eyes, their presence, absorbed every word, every nuance. They asked probing questions, not doubting, but seeking clarification, connections, details. They were far more prepared for this narrative than I could have ever imagined. "The Keepers," Thorne finally said when I had finished the tale, his voice low and thoughtful. "You said they observed, documented, but rarely interfered, until the Harbinger threatened this world." "Yes," I confirmed. "They called it a catastrophic disruption to Earth's natural evolutionary path. Their protocols shifted. They needed a conduit. My bioresonance was compatible." Davis interjected, "And this Harbinger, you believe it's gone for good?" I shook my head. "No, the Keepers said it was repelled, driven back to slumber, not destroyed. It will return, it's relentless." Thorne steepened, "And the shield, this localized field of pure, chaotic bioresonance, what does it do precisely?" "It repels the Harbinger's influence," I explained. "It forms a barrier, a signal, a warning. It prevents the Harbinger from resurfacing, from corrupting this planet. But the Keepers also said its energy needs to be maintained. It's a living shield drawing power from Earth's core, amplified by the central tower. A heavy silence descended upon the room. The agents exchanged a long, meaningful look. "Mr. Carter," Thorne said, his voice grave, "what you've told us, it aligns with fragmented data we've collected over decades. Whispers of ancient civilizations, deep Earth structures, anomalous energy signatures. It's a puzzle we've been trying to solve for generations. And you, it seems, have just handed us the missing piece." "So what now?" I asked, my voice filled with a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. "Now," Thorne replied, "we have to verify, we have to confirm, and then we have to prepare." He paused. "We need to go to that site, Mr. Carter. We need you to take us there, and you will be under our protection, for your safety and for the safety of this knowledge." It was not a request, it was a directive. My life as I knew it was over. I was no longer just Alex, the hiker. I was a witness, a bridge, a vital link to a cosmic truth that humanity was only just beginning to grasp. And if I refuse, I challenged, testing the boundaries of my new reality. Thorne's expression remained impassive. "That is not an option, Mr. Carter. You are now inextricably linked to this threat and to its defense. We cannot afford to lose you or the information you possess. For the sake of Earth, you will cooperate." His words solidified the new path laid out before me. My purpose, forged in an alien chamber, now extended beyond the mountain. I was still a weapon, a shield, an embodiment of resistance, but now I was also a guide. "All right," I said, a grim determination settling over me once more. "But I have conditions. I want to know everything. I want to be involved in whatever comes next, and I want to ensure that the Keepers and their complex remain undisturbed. They chose non-interference for a reason. If humanity isn't ready, we could cause more harm than good." Thorne nodded slowly. "Reasonable requests, Mr. Carter. We will do our best to accommodate them. But understand the scale of this, it's beyond anything we've ever faced. We will need to tread carefully. And you, Mr. Carter, will be at the heart of it." He stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. Davis followed suit. My apartment, once my sanctuary, now felt like a temporary holding cell. "Pack a bag, Mr. Carter," Thorne instructed. "Just essentials. You won't be returning here for a while. We'll arrange everything." I walked to my bedroom, my mind reeling. This was it. The next chapter. The transition from an unwitting participant to a central figure in humanity's secret war. I looked at my small backpack, the one I had carried into the forest, and smiled grimly. It seemed a lifetime ago. I opened my closet, pulling out a duffel bag. As I reached for some clothes, my hand brushed against something familiar in my pocket. The crystalline shard. I pulled it out, holding it up to the light. It still pulsed faintly, a delicate violet glow, a silent beacon from another world. My secret, my proof. I knew this was only the beginning. The Harbinger would return, and when it did, humanity would need more than just a silent shield. It would need its own understanding, its own resolve, its own fight. And I, Alex Carter, the reluctant warrior, would be there to guide them. Over the next few days, I was immersed in a world I never knew existed. Thorne and Davis were my constant companions, guiding me through a labyrinth of protocols, secure facilities, and highly classified information. They introduced me to other agents, specialists in various fields: quantum physics, xenolinguistics, deep earth geology, all of whom looked at me with a mixture of awe, skepticism, and intense curiosity. The organization, which Thorne referred to only as the Veil, operated out of a subterranean complex hidden deep beneath a remote mountain range, thousands of miles from my old life. It was a stark contrast to the ancient, organic architecture of the Keeper complex, a sprawling maze of concrete, steel, and advanced technology. Yet I recognized a similar dedication to knowledge, to protection, albeit through very different means. I underwent extensive debriefings, my testimony recorded, analyzed, cross-referenced with their existing data. I shared every detail, every memory, every nuance of the Keeper's thought voices and the Harbinger's terrifying presence. The crystalline shard, my only physical proof, was meticulously studied in their labs, its unique energy signature confirming the impossible origins of my story. The resonant frequency of this material, it's unlike anything we've ever encountered, a lead scientist, Dr. Aris, explained, his eyes wide with a mixture of scientific zeal and profound wonder. It shows traces of an energy signature that defies known physics, and the violet light, it seems to be in a state of perpetual, subtle flux, as if communicating on a non-verbal level. The Veil's analysis of the seismic activity and atmospheric anomalies in the national forest aligned perfectly with my account. They had tracked the energy spikes, the deep earth tremors, the localized gravitational distortions, all indicators of a colossal energy shift occurring beneath the surface. They even showed me grainy satellite images of the forest canopy, revealing a faint, circular shimmering, a subtle distortion of the air itself, precisely where I had said the shield was active. The Keeper's shield was humming, quietly protecting Earth. My body was subjected to a barrage of advanced medical scans and tests. They confirmed the unusual cellular regeneration markers, now mostly faded, but leaving a subtle residual enhancement in my physical capabilities. My senses were sharper, my reaction times faster, my mind capable of processing information with greater clarity and speed. The optimization had settled, becoming a part of me, a permanent alteration. "You're operating at peak human capacity, Mr. Carter," Dr. Aris told me, a thoughtful frown on his face. "Potentially even beyond. It's as if your entire biological system was retuned. A perfect conduit indeed." They wanted me to help them understand the Keeper's technology, their language, their intentions. I became a living bridge, translating the alien concepts in my mind into human terms, helping them decipher the mysteries of the complex. I explained the concept of bioresonance, the chaotic frequencies of life, the power of Earth's core. "So the Harbinger preys on stillness, on order, on silence," Thorne mused during one of our intense debriefing sessions. "And the Keeper's defense is a symphony of chaotic life, an amplified rejection of that stillness. It's brilliant in its simplicity." "It's a testament to life itself," I corrected, feeling a profound connection to the concept, to the vibrancy of this world. My daily routine became a cycle of debriefings, training, and research. I was introduced to Veil's global network, learning about other anomalous sites, other potential incursions, other whispers of the Harbinger's influence across the galaxy. The universe, through their eyes, was a far more dangerous place than even the Keepers had implied. "The Harbinger isn't just an entity," Agent Davis explained one evening, reviewing ancient star charts and cryptic warnings from other long-lost civilizations. "It's an anti-life force, a cosmic entropy. It seeks to silence all complex life, all chaotic existence. It's not driven by malice, but by a fundamental opposition to the very concept of emergent consciousness. I spent hours in their library, poring over translations of ancient texts, learning about their own theories on deep Earth civilizations, on portals, on the very fabric of reality. They had been trying to piece together this cosmic puzzle for centuries, and I had, by sheer accident, found a core piece. One afternoon, Thorne brought me into a secure lab. On a massive holographic display, a detailed, three-dimensional rendering of the Keeper complex pulsed with faint violet light. It was based on the seismic readings, the energy signatures, and my descriptions. They had mapped it from the surface entrance down to the central command chamber. "This is incredible," I breathed, seeing the familiar geometry, the immense scale. "You've recreated it." "With your help, Mr. Carter," Thorne said, gesturing to the display. "Your mind served as our blueprint. We believe the shield is operating optimally, keeping the Harbinger at bay for now. But we need to understand how to maintain it, how to reinforce it, how to potentially weaponize it further if the Harbinger returns stronger." "The Keepers spoke of reconfiguration," I murmured, remembering the Keeper's thought voice. "From an observation hub to a defensive anchor. They said its energy needs to be maintained. They are the ones who do that silently from within." "But they are essentially dormant, aren't they?" Davis asked, looking at the holographic representation of the slumbering Keepers. A collective consciousness guiding the shield, but not actively involved in its upkeep. "They are maintaining it," I clarified. "Their very existence, their connection to the tower, is the source of its sustained power. They are in a state of deep processing, attuned to the vast data streams, but now also to the shield's needs. Their eternal vigil now includes the defense of Earth." Thorne nodded, his expression thoughtful. "So the complex itself is a living machine, fueled by a dying race and a human conduit. Fascinating." My training intensified. They taught me self-defense, combat strategies, and methods of infiltration and extraction. They taught me how to use their advanced communications, how to navigate their encrypted networks, how to blend into hostile environments. They were preparing me not just for observation, but for active deployment, for a fight. "The Harbinger will test the shield," Thorne told me one day during a simulated combat exercise in a vast training room. "It will probe, it will adapt. We need to be ready when it finds a weakness, or when its influence starts to bleed through again." I proved to be a fast learner. My enhanced reflexes and clarity of mind, remnants of the Keeper's optimization, made me exceptionally capable. I was no longer just a terrified hiker. I was becoming something more. A soldier, a scout, a bridge between worlds. But amidst all the training and information, I felt a deep, persistent ache of loneliness. My connection to the Keepers had faded, replaced by the clinical analysis of the veil. I missed the profound understanding, the silent communion, the sense of being part of something ancient and grand. Here I was a specimen, a tool, albeit a vital one. One evening, I found myself alone in my Spartan living quarters within the Veil complex. I pulled out the crystalline shard, holding it in my palm. Its violet glow was fainter now, almost imperceptible to my human eyes, but I still felt a whisper of its power, a ghost of the Keeper's presence. "Are you still there?" I whispered to the shard, to the silent, ancient race beneath the earth. "Are you watching?" No response, only the gentle hum of the complex, the sterile air, the oppressive silence of my isolation. The world I had saved felt distant, separated from me by layers of secrecy and an impossible chasm of experience. Days turned into weeks, then months. I was fully integrated into the veil, a valued, albeit unique. That's it. Months turned into a year. I was fully integrated into the veil, a valued, albeit unique member of their clandestine operations. The initial awe and skepticism from my colleagues had slowly morphed into a grudging respect, and for some, a genuine camaraderie. I was no longer just Alex Carter, the lost hiker, but Alex, the conduit, the bridge, the one who had seen the impossible and lived to tell the tale. My quarters in the subterranean complex, initially a sterile cage, had become a functional home. I had filled it with books, maps, and the few personal effects the veil had retrieved from my old apartment. The crystalline shard, now my most treasured possession, sat on my desk, its faint violet glow a constant, subtle presence. My training continued relentlessly. I mastered their advanced weaponry, from energy pistols to compact, high-frequency sonic disruptors designed for non-lethal crowd control, though I suspected their true purpose extended beyond urban peacekeeping. I learned how to move silently through complex environments, how to extract information under pressure, how to lead a small team through a crisis. My enhanced physical and mental capabilities, once a bewildering side effect, were now finely tuned instruments. My reflexes were like lightning, my observational skills sharp enough to spot a dust mote's dance in a sunbeam, my mind a processing unit capable of running multiple complex simulations simultaneously. Dr. Eris often referred to me as optimized humanity, a prototype of what mankind could become with a little push from ancient alien tech. It was a flattering, if unsettling, title. The Keepers and their complex remain the Veil's most guarded secret. Based on my detailed recollections and their advanced scans, they had created a virtual replica of the entire subterranean structure, a holographic marvel that pulsed with violet light in their secure labs. They studied the energy flows, the subtle shifts in the shield's output, the silent hum of the dormant keepers. I spent countless hours with their xenolinguists trying to decipher the intricacies of the keepers' thought language to unlock more of their ancient wisdom. It was like trying to translate a symphony into a scientific paper. The core information was there, but the emotional depth, the subtle nuances, were often lost. The core function of the shield is stability, I explained during one session, pointing to a holographic representation of the Earth enveloped in a violet aura. It's not just a barrier against the Harbinger's direct influence, it's a harmonizer. It prevents the chaotic bioresonance of Earth's life from being twisted, from becoming a doorway for the Harbinger. It strengthens the planet's own natural defense mechanisms, making it an unappetizing meal, so to speak. Agent Thorne, now a mentor and a friend, listened intently. So it's not just physical protection, it's psychic, spiritual, even. In a way, I confirmed. The Harbinger feeds on specific resonant frequencies, distorted life energies. The shield saturates the planet with a pure, untainted, chaotic life force. It's like trying to eat spoiled food when an entire buffet of fresh, vibrant energy is available, but the Harbinger is repelled by the type of energy, not its quantity. The Veil's deeper understanding of the Harbinger was equally disturbing. Through ancient star charts and encrypted communications from other interstellar species they had covertly monitored, they confirmed Agent Davis's earlier assessment. The Harbinger was not just an entity, but a fundamental force. It was a cosmic entropy, a vast, unknowable consciousness that sought to simplify to silence, to reduce all complex life to a state of inert, undifferentiated matter. It wasn't evil in a human sense, it was merely an opposing principle to life itself. Its hunger was for the spark of consciousness, the intricate patterns of chaotic bioresonance that made worlds vibrant and unique. It's like a cosmic cleaner, Thorne had once mused, tracing a finger across a holographic projection of a galaxy dotted with countless dead worlds, silent and dark. It purges the universe of anything that deviates from ultimate simplicity, and complex life, sentient life, is the ultimate deviation. The knowledge was a constant weight, a silent scream in the back of my mind. It colored every sunset, every laugh, every moment of peace. Earth was a fragile candle in a vast, dark wind, and the shield, for all its power, was merely a temporary gust of defiance. Then the whispers began. It started subtly in the deeper layers of the Veil's planetary monitoring systems. Faint, almost imperceptible energy fluctuations in distant, uninhabited star systems. Unexplained atmospheric disturbances on exoplanets hundreds of light years away, once teeming with simple life, now growing silent. The Veil's xenolinguists picked up fractured, desperate signals from species they had never openly contacted, urgent warnings about the Great Silencing or the encroaching shadow. "It's moving," Davis announced during a high-level briefing, her voice grave. "It's waking up, and it's heading this way." My heart clenched. I had known this day would come, but the reality of it was a cold, hard knot in my stomach. The Harbinger wasn't coming directly for Earth yet. Its approach was more insidious, more tactical. It was systematically silencing worlds on the periphery of our galactic arm, gathering strength, clearing its path. It was methodical, patient, and utterly relentless. The Veil sprang into full crisis mode. Research intensified, defenses were bolstered, and long-range probes were launched, cloaked and silent, to track the Harbinger's projected trajectory. My role became even more critical. I was the only one who had directly encountered it, the only one who understood the Keeper's technology on an intuitive level. "We need to know more about its weaknesses, Alex," Thorne pressed me one evening as we reviewed star charts of silenced worlds. Anything the Keepers might have hinted at, any vulnerabilities, any patterns in its approach. I closed my eyes, reaching deep into the memories, the echoes of alien thought voice. "It's not about weakness, Thorne, it's about resistance. The Keeper said its nature is to reduce to a primal state. It seeks to eliminate chaos, complexity. The shield works because it creates an overwhelming, vibrant, chaotic field of life resonance. It's antithetical to the Harbinger's very being. It's like trying to drink water that's pure fire." "So more fire then," Davis mused. "But how do we create more fire on a galactic scale, and what if the Harbinger adapts?" That was the terrifying question. The Keeper's shield was a localized defense. What if the Harbinger learned to bypass it, to corrupt it, or simply to overwhelm it with sheer cosmic force? The Veil's scientists, working around the clock, began to explore radical ideas. Project Chimera, they called it. The goal was to replicate the Keeper's bioresonance technology, to create smaller, portable emitters that could be deployed on other worlds, or even within Earth's solar system, to create a network of localized shields. The theoretical framework was sound, based on my understanding of the Keeper's tech, but the practical application was daunting. The core component is a stable, highly resonant energy source, combined with a conduit capable of channeling pure, chaotic life force, Dr. Eris explained, showing me schematics for a prototype device. We can manage the energy source, perhaps miniaturized fusion, but the conduit, that's the hard part. The keepers required an optimized biological being. We don't have an army of Alex Carters at our disposal. You'd need a direct link to a planet's life force or a vast reservoir of it, I added, and a mind capable of directing that energy, of resonating with it. It's not just a switch you flip. The conversation often returned to the Keeper complex. It was the only working example of the technology, the blueprint for humanity's defense. But the Keepers had strictly forbidden interference. Do not disturb the ancient slumber. What if we just observed them more closely? A young, eager scientist proposed one day. Set up more sensitive sensors around the complex. Try to learn more about the shield's maintenance protocols. Thorn shot him a look. Alex has made it clear that direct interference is out of the question. The Keepers maintain a delicate balance. Disturbing them could compromise the shield itself, or worse, awaken them in a way that is detrimental. But the pressure was building. The Harbinger was drawing closer. Its influence, though still distant, was already subtly manifesting on Earth. Cases of inexplicable mass psychosis, localized ecological collapse, and strange, resonant hums picked up by deep-sea sensors, all pointing to the Harbinger's slow, almost imperceptible encroachment. The shield was holding, but the edges of its influence were being tested. One day I was called into Thorne's office. He sat behind his sleek, minimalist desk, a holographic projection of Earth rotating slowly above it, its violet aura glowing faintly. Davis stood beside him, her expression grim. "Alex," Thorne began, his voice serious, "we have a new development, a significant one. Our probes have detected a series of unusual energy signatures emanating from a deep-sea trench in the Pacific. They're faint but persistent, and they match patterns consistent with what you experienced in the cavern." My breath caught. Another artifact, another complex. "Potentially," Davis confirmed, "but unlike the mountain complex, this one appears to be active. And it's radiating a different kind of energy signature, more volatile, more agitated." Thorne leaned forward. "Our analysis suggests it could be another Harbinger-related artifact, but one that is either corrupted or in a state of distress. It's broadcasting a low-level signal, a beacon of sorts. And we believe the Harbinger is actively probing it, trying to exploit it." The Keepers warned about corrupted sites, I recalled, the memory a cold jolt. Places where the Harbinger's influence had lingered, twisting the purpose of the ancient tech. "Exactly," Thorne said. "This could be a critical vulnerability. If the Harbinger manages to fully corrupt another such site, it could create a localized gateway, a breach in the nascent galactic shield the Keepers and your mountain complex are trying to establish." "We need to investigate," Davis stated plainly. "We need to understand what's happening down there and, if possible, neutralize it before the Harbinger gains a foothold." "And you want me to go," I finished, the realization settling over me. My unique connection to these artifacts, my ability to sense and interact with them, made me the obvious, perhaps the only choice. "You are our best and only asset for this, Alex," Thorne confirmed, his gaze unwavering. "Your enhanced resonance, your experience with the mountain complex, your direct interface with the Harbinger's influence, no one else comes close. We can't risk sending a team in blind and accidentally activating something catastrophic." A surge of adrenaline mixed with a familiar, primal fear coursed through me. This was it, my first true mission beyond the sterile confines of the complex. A direct confrontation with the Harbinger's shadow, far from the silent protection of the Keepers. "What are the risks?" I asked, my voice steady despite the internal tremor. "Immense," Davis replied without hesitation. "This is uncharted territory. Deep-sea pressure alone is a challenge. The energy signatures are erratic, and if the Harbinger is actively influencing the site, you could be exposed to its full psychic assault. We'll equip you with the best available technology," Thorne added, gesturing to another holographic display showing a sleek, black deep-sea submersible. A custom-built submersible, advanced shielding, comms. A small elite team will be with you, providing remote support, tactical analysis, and backup if possible. But the crucial work, the interface with the artifact, that will be yours alone. I looked at the rotating Earth, the violet glow of the shield a comforting yet distant memory. This was what I had been preparing for. This was my purpose. The loneliness, the sense of being a tool, all faded in the face of the immediate, tangible threat. "When do we leave?" I asked, my voice firm. Thorne allowed himself a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Tomorrow morning. Preparations are already underway. Get some rest, Alex. You're going to need it." The next 24 hours were a blur of intense final briefings, equipment checks, and psychological conditioning. I met my support team, Dr. Lena Petrova, a brilliant xenolinguist and deep-sea biologist who would act as my primary contact and interpreter, and Commander Jian Li, a former Special Forces operative who would pilot the submersible and handle all tactical situations. Both were highly skilled, professional, and aware of the incredible stakes. They looked at me with a mixture of respect and intense curiosity, knowing my unique role. "We've tracked the energy source to a specific point within the Mariana Trench," Dr. Petrova explained, showing me a detailed map of the abyssal plain. "Approximately 11,000 meters deep. The pressure is crushing, temperatures are near freezing, and the energy signatures are erratic, sometimes spiking, sometimes fading. It's a very unstable environment." Commander Lee nodded grimly. "Our submersible, the Proteus, is designed for these depths, but it's still pushing the limits, and any unexpected energy fluctuations from the artifact could compromise its systems." My own equipment was a marvel of miniaturized veil technology. A specialized pressure suit, sleek and form-fitting, designed to withstand extreme depths while allowing for full mobility. It integrated a sophisticated comms system, environmental sensors, and a personal energy field generator. In my utility belt, I carried several veil-issue tools, a multispectral scanner, a compact energy cutter, and a small, powerful sonic disruptor. And of course, the crystalline shard from the mountain complex remained in a secure pouch, a personal talisman and a silent link to the Keepers. Before we left, Thorne pulled me aside. "Alex, remember your training, trust your instincts. And if at any point you feel overwhelmed by the Harbinger's influence, you abort. We will extract you. We cannot afford to lose you or for you to be compromised." "I understand," I replied, the weight of his words heavy on my shoulders. The journey to the Pacific deep-sea launch site was swift and covert. We boarded a specialized stealth cargo plane flying high above the clouds. The launch platform itself was a massive, submersible vessel disguised as an innocuous weather research station. Deep beneath its waves, the Proteus awaited. Stepping into the submersible was like entering a compact, high-tech cocoon. The cockpit was a nexus of holographic displays, blinking lights, and controls. Commander Lee sat at the helm, his movements precise and calm. Dr. Petrova monitored the array of scientific instruments, her fingers dancing across a holographic keyboard. I took my position in a specialized biofeedback chair, designed to monitor my vital signs and amplify my internal resonance. "The system's nominal," Lee reported, his voice calm. "Initiating descent sequence." The Proteus began its slow, deliberate plunge into the inky blackness of the Pacific. The water outside the viewport was an impenetrable wall, broken only by the submersible's powerful spotlights. The pressure began to mount, the hull groaning softly, a constant reminder of the crushing forces around us. "Depth 100 meters," Petrova narrated. "Temperature dropping, no anomalous energy readings yet." As we descended, the world outside became a realm of alien beauty. Bioluminescent creatures drifted past the viewport, glowing like ephemeral stars in the abyss. Schools of strange, deep-sea fish, their eyes adapted to eternal darkness, scattered at our approach. It was a stark reminder of the chaotic life the keepers sought to protect, a testament to the planet's boundless vitality. "Approaching 5,000 meters," Lee announced. "Pressure 500 atmospheres, all systems holding." My enhanced senses, though dulled by the extreme environment and the submersible's shielding, began to pick up subtle shifts in the ambient energy. A faint hum, like a distant, off-key chord, vibrated through the hull. It was familiar, yet twisted, corrupted. "I'm feeling something," I reported, my voice tight. "A resonance, it's discordant, like the artifact is struggling." Petrova's eyes flickered to her holographic displays. "Alex is registering heightened neural activity, energy fluctuations detected, faint but growing." Lee adjusted his course. "Target coordinates locked. We're directly above the trench now. It's getting pretty dense down here, a lot of geological anomalies." The hum intensified, growing from a distant chord to a throbbing ache in my skull. It wasn't the clean, powerful resonance of the mountain complex. It was a fractured, painful wail laced with a subtle undercurrent of dread. It felt like a living thing in agony. "It's stronger now," I murmured, clutching the arms of my chair. "It's close, and it's not well." The Proteus slowed its descent, hovering over a vast, abyssal plain. The spotlights cut through the darkness, revealing a desolate landscape of volcanic vents, hydrothermal chimneys, and strange, calcified rock formations. And then we saw it. It wasn't a monolith like in the mountain complex, nor a central tower. It was a massive, crystalline structure, half buried in the abyssal mud, its surface encrusted with strange, black growths that looked almost organic. It pulsed with a sickly, greenish-black light, a stark contrast to the vibrant violet of the Keeper's shield. The light flickered erratically, sometimes intensifying to a blinding flash, sometimes almost fading to nothing. "My God," Petrova whispered, her scientific detachment momentarily broken. "It's corrupted." The structure was roughly spherical, almost an immense geode, perhaps a smaller, specialized version of the Keeper's conduits or another type of artifact entirely. But its purpose, whatever it had once been, was now twisted, distorted. "Energy readings are off the charts," Lee reported, his voice tense, "fluctuating wildly. The green-black light is emitting a unique frequency, a destructive one. It's trying to tear itself apart." "That's the Harbinger's influence," I explained, my voice strained. It's consuming the artifact from within, trying to turn its power against itself or against the planet. Thorn's voice crackled over the comms from the surface vessel. Alex, Lena, Giant, status report. What are you seeing? It's a Harbinger corrupted artifact, Thorn, I transmitted. Massive, unstable, it's broadcasting a death rattle, trying to rip open a hole in reality. Can you stabilize it? Thorn asked, his voice laced with urgency. I don't know, I admitted. I need to get closer to establish a connection, but its resonance, it's actively painful. Sending a small drone ahead for closer inspection, Lee said, deploying a miniature remote-controlled probe from the submersible. The drone, equipped with its own lights and sensors, zipped towards the artifact. As the drone approached, the green-black light pulsed with greater intensity. The very water around the artifact seemed to shimmer, distorting the light, creating unsettling optical illusions. And then, as the drone was just meters away, a wave of raw, psychic dread washed over us. It was like a silent scream of utter despair, of cosmic loneliness, of an ancient force trying to break free. The Harbinger, I gasped, clutching my head. Its influence is here. It's actively trying to corrupt it further, to use it as a portal. Petrova quickly adjusted her readings. Energy spikes across the board. The drone's systems are failing. It's being actively disrupted. The drone's image on our main display flickered, then dissolved into static. Drone lost, Lee stated, his jaw tight. That thing has a localized EMP field or something similar, and a psychic attack that's affecting Alex. Alex, can you still function? Thorn's voice was sharp. I took a deep breath, fighting against the crushing dread. Yes, but it's intense. I need to override the Proteus's shielding to get a clean read, and then I need to get out there. Overriding shielding could be catastrophic for the submersible, Lee warned. The psychic feedback could overwhelm our systems, let alone yours. We don't have a choice, I countered, looking at the writhing, corrupted artifact. This is a direct threat. If that thing becomes a full gateway, the mountain shield won't be enough. The Harbinger will tear through this world. Thorn's voice came back firm. All right, Alex. Giant, prepare to disembark. Alex. Lena, prepare a targeted energy dampener. Alex, your suit's internal shielding is your only protection out there. Your mission is to connect with the artifact, understand its state, and if possible, neutralize the corruption. If you sense it's too far gone, or if the Harbinger is too strong, you extract immediately. No heroics, understand. Understood, I said, already moving towards the airlock. Donning my specialized pressure suit was a familiar routine. It sealed with a soft hiss, the internal life support systems kicking in. The helmet closed, and my field of vision was filled with holographic readouts of my vitals, depth, and atmospheric pressure. I felt a surge of cold determination. This was my fight. Opening outer hatch, Lee announced. The airlock hissed, filling with water. Alex, moving you into position near the main viewport, tether engaged. I was slowly maneuvered out of the submersible, held by a strong magnetic tether, until I was floating just meters from the main viewport, directly facing the corrupted artifact. The green-black light unfiltered by the Proteus's hull was even more horrifying. It pulsed with a sickening rhythm like a dying heart. The psychic dread was immediate, overwhelming, a torrent of despair that slammed into my mind. Alex, status, Petrova's voice was urgent in my comms. It's like a scream, I managed, fighting to keep my thoughts clear. A pain beyond comprehension. The harbinger isn't just trying to corrupt it, it's torturing it. I focused, pushing past the dread, extending my enhanced senses towards the artifact. I reached out with my mind, trying to establish a resonance, a connection. It was like trying to grasp smoke. The artifact's energy field was a chaotic storm, a whirlwind of conflicting frequencies. Then a thought, or rather an echo of a thought, broke through the maelstrom. It was faint, fragmented, but unmistakably keeper. A corruption breach warning. It was a cry for help, an ancient consciousness trapped, being devoured. It's a keeper artifact, I confirmed, my voice hoarse. Or something very similar. It's alive, or what's left of it, and it's begging for release. Thorne's voice was grave. Release, Alex, what does that mean? I think it wants to be shut down, I deduced, the alien concepts flowing into my mind. Its purpose is being twisted. Its very existence is becoming a weapon for the harbinger. It wants to go silent, to die. Can you do that? Davis asked. Can you shut it down? I don't know, I admitted. The mountain monolith was passive. This one is actively struggling. I need to get closer to touch it. Giant, release tether, Thorne commanded. Alex, move slowly, maintain focus. Lena, prepare the dampener. If Alex is compromised, activate it immediately. I acknowledged, Lee said. The tether disengaged with a soft click. I drifted forward, my suit's thrusters making minor adjustments. The green-black light intensified with my approach, casting grotesque shadows on the abyssal floor. The psychic wail became a deafening roar in my mind, a barrage of terror and existential emptiness. It felt like standing at the edge of a black hole, feeling its immense gravitational pull on my very soul. I reached the surface of the artifact. It was covered in the strange, black, organic growths pulsing with the sickly light.